All right. Hello. I know I'm late. How are you guys doing? Hello, hello. Good to see you, Crystal. It's been a while. Hi, Lily. Thank you for the 50 bits at the beginning immediately. As always. Throwing your bits at me, huh? Yeah, my D&D session today took a bit longer than usual, so I'm a bit late, but here we are, guys. And never when I know one snacks. I know, I'm late. Yeah, our session went on a bit longer today, so here I am now. Well, now you get to do both. You can watch me read. Right? Okay. But yeah, we'll be doing a bit more of the book today. I do have some other things I want to do today because it's getting close to it being gone. I still have to do the Genshin event where you can get the free Yahoda. I haven't done any of it yet. So, and it's like 2 days left, 3 days left on it. Gotta get on that. So we'll be doing book, and then we'll be hopping on Genshin, doing that event. We have to do it. Because also it's like, isn't it like on Tuesday now, or Tuesday or Wednesday now, we're gonna get the new patch as well, right? We get to Naya, right? Naya's coming soon. August this year, guys. I'm very curious where the next patch is gonna go with the whole Irminsul and Sumeru stuff. So that's gonna be very interesting. Because I've also seen people have pointed out that the name of the patch, the name of the quest and all, is a name that has been mentioned already almost 5 years ago. I think it was funky. That's fair. But if I remember, so the quest name, was it this trailer? Oh yeah, it was. When was that uploaded? 5 years ago. So people have pointed out, and maybe they've had it originally planned in a different order, but let's see. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. The characters and the stories, but grinding and fighting wore me out. That's fair. See if I have it set up. Also, hey Oasis, how's it going? So whoever remembers this old trailer, this was uploaded 5 years ago, the chapter storyline preview, right? We had
the war has already begun.
The whole thing narrated by Dainsliv. And if I remember correctly, this quest's patch, this patch's quest, the new one, has the name Truth Amongst the Pages of Purana, which was supposed to be Act 3 Sumeru in the story preview trailer 5 years ago. we are now getting this quest. And as well, like 5 years ago, you already see characters, you know, like Sino here, Lenny and Lynette, Yansan. Like, we knew of all of that. Why did you remember that? Well, I knew of the trailer, but I was watching some videos about, like, you know, some lore, like Genshin lore YouTubers and stuff that were like bringing that up. I personally didn't even remember it myself, but because I actually haven't watched the live stream yet. I actually haven't watched the live stream. But yeah, oh yeah, like I'm going onto the live stream here right now, right? And I just see this. Truth amongst the pages of Piranha, which is what we just talked about from the trailer 5 years ago. This is going to be the new quest for the update. It's crazy that everything's getting connected now. Everything is coming together. Let me put the music back on in the background. I have not looked into it yet. Yansan 5 years ago, yeah, they have already planned out most of like everything that's gonna happen in Genshin from the very get-go. Like they knew what they were doing. The only thing, like what they've said as well was Not Cry in and of itself wasn't planned from the beginning. That where, like, you know, the whole we're going to Not Cry thing and all that. That was a thing they've thought about later. But they've had most things already planned out, like what characters are going to be from where and like what the big story chapters are called. Because I just saw as well the what they said for Act 4 for Fontaine. It said Masquerade of the Guilty. What was the Act 5 of Fontaine? Masquerade of the Guilty. In my opinion, still one of the best Archon quests we've had so far. I love the quest Masquerade of the Guilty. It's so good. But yeah, we'll have to see. What keeps me still on Genshin really is just that we are finally getting to see the payout of the build-up over 5 years of like all the bricks being placed and everything coming together now. I want to see how it ends, or like where this is going now. I don't think it's gonna end because obviously I feel like after we're done with Sessionaya, there's still gonna be more content. I don't think they're just gonna drop Genshin like that. So there's probably going to be other things that's going to be happening, but it's really cool to see just now how everything is starting to really come together from years and years of brickwork and layering everything together. As somebody who has been there since the very beginning and has seen all the theories that people have come up with over the years and how some of them either came true or were, you know, debunked from the game at some point. But it's such a cool experience, and for me personally, being there since the beginning and seeing everything being laid out now. It sucks because some of the lore bits that are important now have been are bidding upon bits that were part of event quests, which again, I am still sad that we don't have a feature to replay old events for newer players so they can experience at least the lore and the story of it. That's the least they could do. If they don't, like, it seems like Genshin has been getting a bit more stingy with the rewards. So, like, if they don't want to give you rewards for replaying old events, at least make it possible to replay them for older players so they can experience the story. Because there's so much lore and so much story that can become pretty important now in those events. Especially, I would always say, the summer events. The whole thing, Durin as a character, the whole reason we have Durin is because of Simulanka, which was a summer event. It was a summer event from like 2 years ago, which, by the way, Simulanka was amazing, but still, like where, how would a newer player that would start like now when Notcry came out know who the hell is this mini Durin and what the fuck is Durin? And then obviously as well during the quest with the Albedo trial, how would newer players know about the whole thing we learned about in an event in version 2? I forgot what it was like 2.6 or something, with the whole fake Albedo with like the clone or whatever it was, like the other version of him that was like created through the ley lines. Fox Paimon, yeah, that too, we still don't know that either, really. So, but you know, like there's so many things that have become pretty important nowadays that were based on old events. Simulanka was so good. It was so good. I would still say, just talking summer events, not talking about every event ever released, just talking summer events, the second Golden Apple Archipelago, which was focusing on Mona and Fischl, was my favorite. My favorite summer event. I do love the last one we had as well with the, you know, with the Natlan Resort and, you know, having Bennett's backstory in there now. And I'm glad they've made that a permanent thing, that you can still play the quests so you can still experience that. Same now with Zabai's story with the Lantern Rite. But the Golden Apple Archipelago with Fischl and Mona, they dove pretty deep into some like lore and like backstory stuff, especially for Mona and Fischl. That was so interesting. The map was really cool to explore. The I mean, it was interesting because they reused the Golden Apple Archipelago, being like, oh, we had the Golden Apple Archipelago last year. And I feel like at that point people were also like, oh, is every summer event just going to be a different version of like, is every summer event just going to be a different version of Golden Apple? But then we had the Sumeru bottle one, which I didn't really like. We had Simulanka, which was fucking amazing. We had the resort, which was really cool. I'm curious what they're going to be doing this year for the summer event. But we're all hams. Yeah, I mean, the power creep, we don't even have to talk about the power creep at this point. We all know the power creep has been getting out of hand. That's for sure. But yeah, at first I was just like, oh, we're getting the Golden Apple Archipelago again when it came around the second time, but they made it a completely new and unique experience. Yes, the layout of the maps and the islands were still the same, but what was on the islands and what we were doing on these islands was so different and so unique that I feel like they absolutely nailed it. It was still one of my favorite events, especially my favorite summer event. If I could say, what would be my favorite event of all time they've made? I think it's either the Lantern Rite with the Hoot House story, because that was really good. I think that was the one before Zabai's, so one of the newer ones. I think the first or second Lantern Rite was really good as well. Man, we had so many events over the years. You gotta keep in mind, there's like one big event every update, basically. So, but like those are the ones that are like, even if they're a bit older, those are the ones that like still stick around in my mind. I mean, Unreconciled Stars, the very first big event we've had in 1.1, the one where Scaramouche made his first appearance as well. Back then, that event was pretty fucking good as well. For like being their first one, sure, the mechanics were still unrefined, and like what we were able to do and some of the rewards we got, it was still working on all of that. But story-wise and the experience overall was really good. And I'm still remembering things about it to this day. It's been 5 years. It was one of the first big events they've made. And I'm here like, yeah. I still remember Scaramouche popping up. I still remember the whole story about the mountain climber. I remember the talk about the sky being fake and all the theories that started spreading at that point, because why the fuck would he say that? It's like they've already been planting these seeds that something's wrong with Hivat from the very get-go. Linnea might be part of it. I mean, Linnea definitely catapulted Zabai into even higher stratospheres, but Zabai was already pretty good. Considering, like, we have the other Luna characters at that point when Zabai came out already had like their quote-unquote premium supports with Lauma for Nefer and Inefa for Flins. We had, sure, we had Itlua, but we didn't have like a 5-star premium support yet for Luna Crystallize, as we've had for, you know, Lauma and Inefa. So I feel like it was inevitable that we would get one, but the way Linnea is doing it and is catapulting her up is just so insane. But the fact that Zabai was already, without Linnea, with just Itlua and all that, and Goro, was already on a level at C0 with like premium Nefer or premium Flints was insane. And then Linnea just being like, yeah, no, now she's just better. Now she's just better. And she needs less investment, really, as well. Like, first of all, she's super easy to play. Because, like, if you want to play Nefer correctly, you have the whole, like, you know, charge attack animation cancel, like dash cancels, all that. Flints with this whole, like, you need enough energy that you can do his mini burst every rotation, all that kind of stuff. Zabai, you roll your fucking face on the keyboard and shit dies. You don't even have to, like, really worry about too much about rotations with her as much as you do with, like, Nefer and Flints. Like, she's the easiest to play out of the Luna characters. She is easier to build because I mean, sure. You still have the whole you still need your crits, you still need your other substats, but like defense, you don't have to worry about too much attack. You can literally just throw a 3-star weapon on her. I mean, Harbinger of Dawn is just broken in general. Like for defense scaling DPS sword user, Harbinger of Dawn is such a strong weapon because they do not care about the base attack. Being a 3-star weapon having low base attack doesn't matter to them because their attack stat is useless to them. That's why, like, if you didn't get... Oh, that's why before we've gotten Cinnabus Spindle, for example, with Albedo, with the event, one of Albedo's best weapons, who would have guessed? Harbinger of Dawn. Now, if you don't have Cinnabus Spindle nowadays, you have Harbinger of Dawn. You have the Natlan Craftable Flute of Etspital. You could probably also use like Chiori's weapon, maybe even now Zabai's weapon on him, but so how is Zabai different from Clarant? Why is Harbinger of Dawn bad on Clarant? Clarant cares about attack. Clarant is an attack scaler. You can use it on her, but having lower base attack means that your attack percent stats as well from your artifact will be less effective. I get that Zabai has pretty important origins and Lena is also very special, but it is kind of crazy. Yeah, I feel like if you also compare to, like, we have the whole Luna thing going on right now with Linnea, with Nefer, with Lauma, with Flynn's, with Inefa and all that, and then they're also trying to do like the whole witch thing with the buffs for the old characters, with Varka, with Lohan, with Nicole, with Durin, all that kind of stuff. And it, like, looking at the characters, like, I feel like one of the big reasons Varka was so disappointing for a lot of people was the fact that he's gonna be compared to the damage and the DPS of the Luna characters that came before him. I mean, the expectation is obviously, ooh, new character, shiny, he's gonna be good. If you want to play him, he's gonna be good. Like, he has to be at the modern standard of what people would expect from a unit coming out in 2026. And then seeing like, oh, Varka's damage isn't even as good as like some of the Luna teams. It feels underwhelming. But I don't know. We'll have to see now with Nicole and Lohan specifically. Lohan seems like he's gonna be pretty good, but he's also very dependent on being in a witch team because he's also a witch character himself. Nicole, same thing, unless I think you have like her C1 or C2, she's very much restricted mostly into witch teams as well. So I don't know. But yeah, the reason like you could use Harbinger of Dawn on Clarant, but again, the lower your base attack is already, the less valuable or the less value you get from your attack percent substats and stuff as well. That's why that's why they balance their weapons in the way that, like, if you have a high base attack, the substat is usually on the lower side, while if you have a lower you have a lower base attack, the substat is higher. Look at Shenyun's weapon. Shenyun's catalyst has 740 base attack and only 16% attack on it, while if you would take another catalyst with attack percent that a lot of people are using as a substitute for if they don't have the signature on Shenyan, for example. One of the other good options is another event weapon, the Oathsworn Eye. Sure, it's a 4-star, so the lower base attack is already a given, but Oathsworn Eye, I think, has like 540 base attack, but gives you 48% attack from the substat, from the passive. But that still is overall less attack, like less total attack, than the 700 base attack with only 16% attack. So the main thing is that some characters don't care for attack stat at all, and Zabai is among. Yes, most of Zabai's damage, which are her geo-infused normal attacks and the Luna hit, the Luna crystallized hits from her skill, scale off of her defense. There's nothing that would really matter her attack, unless you want to, I don't know, do a physical, just normal attack spam Zabai, where you don't even use the skill. Those are attack scaling. But most of her damage comes from the infused geo attacks and the skill Luna crystallized hits, which are all defense scaling. I'd be lying if it. Yeah, I mean, you can make it work, but then obviously Harbinger of Dawn doesn't become as much of a desirable option compared to some other weapons that have higher base attack. You'd have to definitely use a different weapon with more base attack. But since Zabai doesn't really care if you play her in her intended role, in her intended way, she doesn't really care about the base attack. She only cares about like all of her other stats, her defense and her crit stats. The fact that Harbinger of Dawn gives you, I think, isn't it like 20 or like more than 20 crit rate and like 40 crit damage? It gives you 80 crit value as a 3-star weapon. Defense by 20%, damage crystallized by 64% of the equipping character. Yeah, and then well, I think it's a crit. Is it crit rate or crit damage main stat? Let's go with Geo Immunity, but one day I want my Columbino more damage made. Hell yeah. Crit damage. Yeah, so you have the crit damage substat, you have the base attack, I think, is also only going to be around. Is it even 600? Let me see. No, it's 540. So it's a low base attack, high substat. That's why it has. I'm looking at it right now. It has 88 crit damage, but only 540 base attack, because she doesn't really care that much about the base attack. So they can do a low base attack with high substat weapon for her without really sacrificing much of her damage and her kit integrity. But since, for example, Shenyan is a character that really values having a lot of attack, they decided to give her a high base attack with a lower substat. So it's still like balancing out. There's a lot of like theory crafting and like maths that go into the. It's crazy 64% multipliers to compensate for the fact that it does a higher base attack. I mean, some of the signature weapons bonus effects are just insane overall. I think they just did that to just make her even more powerful. But again, that's another thing, like they could just do that. I think Novelette's weapon is another example as well, where it's like I think it's also like 540 base attack with like 88 crit damage. like 60 crit damage or something like that, because most of his attacks scale off of HP. He doesn't really care about attack either. So why not give him more valuable stats? Believe it. We'll see. I heard that there might be a new superconduct reaction kind of thing happening with Snezhnaya. You know how we, you know, with the Luna stuff, where we basically got like a new electrocharge, a new bloom, and all that. We might be getting something similar with Snezhnaya. With I've heard rumors about a new superconduct, and apparently we might also be getting a reaction between Cryo and Dendro. How much of that is true, I have no idea. Those are rumors I've heard. But maybe just like Inefa was basically the first character to introduce the Luna reactions to us before Notcry came out. Who knows? Sandrone might be a character that introduces us to the new superconduct mechanic before Snezhnaya comes out. If she's going to be the last character before the Snezhnaya patch, then they could do a similar thing as what they did with Inefa being one of the last characters of the Natlan patch before Notcry, already giving us an example of what the new reactions might be looking like and what to expect in the and the whole thing. Taking bets on what her shtick will be, we'll see. I still don't really know. We'll have to see what they're going to be doing with Cryo throughout Snezhnaya in general, I'd say. Also, hi Enzo, I did see you there. How you doing? Welcome in. It's just I'm just hoping. They already yeah, they did a little bit, but Cryo still seems to be in a very weird spot, because like what kind of reactions do we have with Cryo? We have superconduct, freeze, melt, crystallize. What else do we have? And then looking at the reactions, like, yeah, crystallize just gives you a shield. Superconduct does a little bit of AoE damage, similar to what Overload does, and shreds physical res. Now, if only physical characters would be more viable, this is a question. And then there's freeze and melt. Freeze definitely has seen a bit more of a resurgence with Escoffier and Skirk because of the mechanics revolving around these characters. I hope your day goes well. No worries, Crystal. I appreciate you stopping by. Have fun reading. We're going to be starting with our reading here soon as well. I might be wrong, but I think the buy priorities like Luna Crystallize, crit, defense percent, EM, and a toss. I mean, elemental damage isn't, I guess, the worst on her, but you wouldn't want to put a Geo Goblet on her, because her main damage is still through other sources. But that's why, for example, having had like Goro on the team and also Linnea now, Goro giving you defense and geo damage bonus was nice, and Linnea shredding 30% like geo res definitely still increases her geo damage parts. So yeah, like her main priority are crit and defense, and maybe a bit of ER to have at least like a comfortable rotation to get her burst. But you don't really need too much. And then obviously a Luna reaction still scales off of EM, so a little bit of EM never hurts. Like if you get like an EM substat in your artifact, it's not going to be wasted. It's not going to be the main focus compared to what you would do with Luna Bloom. Like, Luna Bloom is all about your EM. That's why you play Nefer EM crit. Or I've even seen some people, I guess if you have higher constellation Nefer and maybe even higher constellation Lauma, and you can compensate the crit you lose from your circlet through other means, you could run triple EM on Nefer, like EM circlet, EM goblet, EM sands. Like I've seen both triple EM or EM crit. But yeah, with Zabai, definitely crit defense, and then if you get a little bit of EM, that never hurts. That's for sure. And then you get your higher geo damage through your other party members, either buffing your geo damage through Goro, or I think, does Ilua only buff Luna Crystallize or also geo? I don't remember. But then obviously Linnea, the 30% geo res shred, which is nice that she has the geo res shred and not just gives you a Luna Crystallize damage bonus, because that makes her so fucking fun and viable in other Luna Crystallize geo teams, like my Navia team that I play, or you know, people have been experimenting with like Noel or Ningguang as well, Zhongli, because like the geo shred is just good for all of them. They do geo damage, so of course it's gonna work on them. It's like, you know, if we talk about like some other characters that can shred resistances, so you have almost every animal character who can shred resistances with VV. They can't shred geo because there's no animal and geo reaction. Then you have like your universal shredders like Zhongli, or like defense shredders like Lisa with her C4, or Raiden C2, all that kind of stuff, which, yeah, it's gonna increase your damage. And then you have characters like Shilonen and Linnea, who are focused on shredding geo in their kit. And even then, I would say Linnea's shred might be slightly better than Shilonen's, because sure, at talent level 10, Shilonen shreds 36%, while Linnea only shreds 30%. But that 6% doesn't really matter too much. The difference is that for Shilonen's shred, I think it doesn't have full uptime. And obviously you have to swap to Shilonen, do her skill, do the 2 normal attacks, and like get that shred back, all that stuff. While with Linnea, as long as you have Lumi on the field, which you put Lumi on the field once with your skill, and then, I don't know, you need to heal, you switch back to her, use her burst, which refreshes Lumi's duration, boom. You have permanent uptime of a 30% res shred monster of a DPS thingy on the field with Lumi. Because obviously Lumi's value is not just the 30% res shred that it gives while being on the field, but also the off-field geo and Luna Crystallize damage that it provides, and that is nothing to scoff at. That damage is insane. So yeah, I'm curious to see though where the witch characters are going to be going, because if we go back to what I said with like the cryo reactions, yes, we had freeze a little bit again with Escoffia and all. Melt had a little bit of a comeback as well, but that's mainly because Mawika just worked super well with Melt, and Lali was a good support for that too. And like Melt, obviously you have 2 ways of melting. You have your forward melts where your pyro character is the one triggering the melt, and you have your reverse melt where your cryo character is the one triggering the melt, which have different multipliers. If you do a reverse melt, so your cryo character triggers the melt, it's only a 1.5 times damage increase, while a forward melt, when your pyro character triggers the melt, is a 2 times multiplier. They have the same thing with Vaporize. If you trigger Vaporize as the pyro character on Hydro, it does 1.5 times damage. If you trigger Vaporize with the Hydro character on Pyro, it's 2 times damage. And so far, like, Reverse Melt had a few times where it's shown. Looking at like old Burn Melt Ganyu, for example, that was a big thing. Or you have Reverse Melt Risley. But then Ayaka, for example, she was big on freeze, because the whole thing that made Ayaka strong is the fact that if you freeze the enemy, your burst just hits every hit on the enemy because they cannot move out of it. So yeah, we'll see. Lohan seems to be somebody who will probably utilize melt as well, but more in the way that he will enable Durin to melt off field. It seems like Durin is gonna be one of his best teammates, and you're gonna be doing a more like a melt Durin. You have your on-field Lohan applying the cryo, and then Durin from off-field triggering melt in his dark form for extra damage. Which, to be fair, will benefit Lohan's damage, because Lohan's damage is based on how much damage your other off-field units can do while he is in his skill. The more damage your off-field units do, the more damage Lohan will do. I would assume they would definitely add something new to cryo to make it more viable, but what they'll be doing, we'll have to see once we get to that point. I'm very excited to see that, because to this day, keep in mind, I've been playing the game since it came out. I don't have a cryo DPS. Cryo is the element I'm lacking the most in. Of course, I have Kaya. I have Silali. I have some other like cryo supports like Rosaria. Like, I didn't go for Ayaka. I don't like Ganyu. I didn't go for Risley. I didn't go for Escoffier. I don't have Skirk. I'm missing out on a lot of the good cryo characters. So Lohan was actually one that I was excited about, that if he... It seems like right now people assume, because it wasn't mentioned, that he might not become a standard banner character after all, which would kind of suck, because my priority would probably be Durin. Now I'm trying to get Durin first, because Durin just gives me more options as well for Yoimiya, for Klee, and Venti, and all the other kind of teams that I want to make. And then I was thinking of going for Nicole. And then, you know, maybe around the anniversary, I'll pick up a Lohan if he's going to be on the standard banner anyway from the standard picker. But since they didn't mention anything like that, it might not be actually that Lohan might be a standard character, and that's gonna suck because I really want Lohan, but I might just go Durin and then Lohan if I get Durin early, and then try to go for Lohan. I might just completely have to skip out on Nicole. We'll have to see when it comes to it. I'm mostly, like I said, my biggest excitement for the next update is gonna be the story quest again. Going back to Sumeru, seeing the Irminsul tree burning and the whole thing that's going on there. That has also been a thing for such a long time. I forgot where it was. It was like in the early Sumeru Archon quest, or if it wasn't an event or something. But there was a scene where Kale was dreaming, and the dream was that she saw the Irminsul tree burning. And then Nicole recently mentioned something that dreams can sometimes show you what might happen in the future. That it could be prophetic in a way. And we know that Dottore is planning something to do something with the Irminsul tree. Burning it down is probably his best option. Because keep in mind, all the knowledge, all the memories of Teyvat, all the ley lines that converge in the world are connected and stored in the Irminsul tree. What would happen if the entire database basically of Teyvat gets destroyed? We've already seen what can happen when people are tampering with the Irminsul tree. Look at Wanderer. He deleted his old existence as Scaramouche, as the Harbinger, out of the Irminsul tree. That's why all of the other Harbingers, like throughout Notcry, none of them recognized him, because to them, he never existed, because he was deleted off of the Irminsul database. Sandrone didn't recognize him. Colombina didn't recognize him. Arlecchino didn't recognize him. Dottore seems to know a bit more, and maybe he got caught off by surprise for that one moment when he swooped in to save the Traveler during the whole monologue that he had. But even he was like, in the beginning, was like, who was that? Like, nobody remembers who he was before, because he tampered with Irminsul. He deleted that part. So what would happen if the whole tree is just gone? The whole database is just going to get wiped, basically. And it's also the whole thing with Rukkhadevata, the previous Dendro Archon. Nobody remembers her, because they removed her from the Irminsul tree as well to save it. The Traveler is the only one that remembers, because the Traveler is not connected to Teyvat and to Irminsul. That's why he can remember. Or they, if you know. The Traveler can remember because they're not part of Teyvat and not part of the whole Irminsul database. But the people on Teyvat, they're going to be affected by it. I'm very curious where that quest is going to go. And like I said in the beginning, with the name being something that they've referenced 5 years ago, I'm really curious on what they have been cooking for those 5 years. If that's been planned for that long in advance already, It's got to be something big. They've had a long time to really flesh this out. And it's going to be interesting. Again, that is what's keeping me playing Genshin. The theories, the story, seeing the payoff of years and years of build-up now. That is what keeps me still playing. I'm not a fan of the power creep. I don't like where some of the end game is going, and the enemy designs basically kind of forcing you to play the new characters because of the mechanics they enforce on the bosses. I'm not a fan of that. What I am a fan of is the story, the world, the characters outside of gameplay. And I'm very excited to see where that is going. But yeah, if we take a look at some of the newer bosses, like the Gecko, basically either you have like a very good Claymore character, a very good Geo, or you just Luna crystallize, it goes down. You have the horse. You can cheese it in other ways as well, but it's also kind of like you want to use Luna. What's it called? I don't remember the name, but that Wild Hunt boss, with the extra like Luna HP bar, with the Luna shield bar that you have to break before you can actually really damage it. Again, you can cheese it if you have high enough DPS with like a Mawika or a Skirk, but Luna does it better. They're forcing mechanics onto the newer enemies that make it hard to play older teams because they cannot like brute force it as much anymore. Mawika is still one of the only characters that can still somewhat brute force certain content. Mawika is one, I would say, apart from playing like your Luna teams, like your Luna crystallize on the Gecko, Mawika is one of the only characters that can still clear the Gecko without having to deal with the Luna mechanics. But just by sheer brute force and Mawika being a Claymore, still being able to destroy that Geo Shield in the beginning fairly quickly, and then just absolutely demolishing it with her damage. Like my Navia just barely, even in my Luna crystallized Navia with Linnea, C1 and Columbina can only barely clear it. So yeah, it is, we're getting to the point where I feel like the power creep has already gone out of control in my opinion, but it's getting worse and worse per patch. I was thinking lately how Hoyo has had new versions of characters in new games, keeping the characters a bit more game and lore relevant, but in Genshin the characters hide the state of the game. Yeah, I just hope that, you know, I mean, the witch characters are fun. Obviously, I mean, I enjoyed the fact that we got buffs for some of the older characters. Looking at Klee, I'm really enjoying witch Klee now. And but like compared to some of the damage that the Luna teams can do, like the witch teams still feel underwhelming. Like if I know it's not like the perfect measurement, the whole like DPS dummy you can do now in Miliastra, it's not perfect. It's not like you can gauge how good a team is by, you know, just standing still, spamming buttons, seeing your perfect rotations. But it can give you a decent, I would say, it could give you a decent perspective on where the power in your teams is. And then if you compare for me, my Nefer team does around like 120k. My Navia Lunar Crystallizer does about 130k. My Neuvillette does around 80 to 90k. Klee does 60k. I have a top 1% Klee on the new set, witch buffs active, with a Chevreuse. Sure, it's only a C4 Chevreuse. At C6, the team would probably do way more DPS. But still, compared to some of my other teams, seeing the numbers that much lower feels weird. Even after the buffs. And like, Varka maybe cracks around like 90 to 100k as well, if you have a decent Varka. It's like, even then already, like maybe with Nicole, mostly with Prune though, actually, especially C6 Prune, Varka will improve. Picking his head in what was starting Fontaine. By Natlan, my first full region, I could tell, and Nokra is very apparent. Yeah. Like, Fontaine, I would say, definitely raised the bar a little bit. Looking at characters like Arlecchino when she came out, Farina, Neuvillette. Navia was pretty strong as well. Clorant was fairly decent. But like, older teams, like even your Sumeru teams, your Hyper Bloom was still very popular back then as well, because, you know, Nahida was just still super fucking good. You played just everything there. You could still do some like aggravate things with like coaching. And even back then, like when Clorant came out, we didn't really have much of Overload Clorant as we have now with also Mawika. Like you do like Mawika, Clorant, Chevreuse, I don't know, Bennett or Yansan, something like that. Because of just how strong Chevreuse is and Mawika is. So back then you also played Aggravate Clorant. So you still had some influence with some of the older characters, but then Natlan came out. With the whole Night Soul mechanic, making it a bit more region specific. Mawika dropped and everything was gone. From that point onward, I felt like, yeah. And yeah, then Luna. To be fair, I feel like as strong as the Luna teams are, and I would say Zabai, especially in her premium team, is a bit of an exception. The only reason Luna is so good right now is also because the bosses and the enemies that we are fighting require Luna-based mechanics. If we would start seeing enemies that don't necessarily need Luna mechanics, sure. Again, the Luna teams, their DPS, nothing to scoff at, still good. Again, my Nefer hitting like 120k, all that kind of stuff. Like, they're still gonna be clearing, they're still gonna be able to like do everything. But the reason they're just so prevalent and so good right now is because every boss in most endgame content right now requires you in some way to have a Luna mechanic in there. Even the normal Wild Hunt enemies, even if they don't specifically need Luna, and you can clear with other teams, to make it easier, you at least want to run Ascendant Gleam, meaning you already have to run 2 Luna characters. Which in that case, at that point, you're kind of just playing a Luna team anyway, right? Like, my Navia team has Linnea Columbina. You have your Ascendant Gleam in there, boom, you can deal with the Wild Hunt mechanics way, way easier. That like gray health bar, the double health bar thing. Because effectively, depending on how much damage you do, the difference can be from having to deal about like 1.5 times the enemy health bar with Ascendant Gleam to probably having to deal with 3 to 4 times the enemy health bar in non-Ascendant Gleam teams, because of the way the whole gray health works on Wild Hunt monsters. And if your characters don't have the DPS for that, that's a struggle. Looking at, I think, either Last Abyss or the one before that, where we had the chamber with the 2 Wild Hunt beasts in there, I think they had around like 5 million, 6 million HP. So with the Luna team, you had to quote unquote only deal around like 8 million damage to kill one, while with a non-Luna team, with a non-Ascendant Gleam team, there was a possibility that you might even have to do like 15 to 20 million damage to kill one. And the longer you need in one chamber in Abyss, obviously, the more time you bleed for the other chamber. So I think it's mostly because they're forcing these mechanics on us right now. Again, the teams are strong. They're some of the strongest DPS teams we still have. So once we get past the Luna stuff, they're still going to be strong. But the reason I feel like it's mostly so prevalent is because we are forced into a lot of Luna mechanics that just incentivizes you to run them because it makes it easy. And like with the witch characters so far, with the Hex and Circle characters, it doesn't seem like we have a lot. Like the Mandragora, the boss fight, the local legend of Mandragora. Venti, if you have Venti Varka, you have a pretty, or like Venti Duran, you have a pretty easy time with that. That's like one of the only bosses in the game right now where having a decent witch team can help. Venti just being so good because he can completely suck up when it splits up and like have all of the ones in one concentrated area, and then you could just absolutely wail on them at once and easily destroy them. But like, that's one enemy out of how many we've gotten now in Nodcry and we've had in Abyss and stuff. There's just so much going on right now with Genshin where I feel like once we get out of Nodcry, we're gonna have the new mechanics, and then the newer characters are gonna be forced into that because we're gonna get bosses and enemies that work with the new mechanics, and then the whole shebang all over again. Maybe even worse. Who the fuck knows at this point? I hope it won't get to that point because, again, I still enjoy the game and I want to enjoy the game as long as I can. And again, for me as well, the end game was never something like, sure, I was trying something stupid for like hours with the current Stygian, but like my main focus really isn't being able to clear much of the end game. If I can get the 36 stars in Abyss, I will get the 36 stars in Abyss. If I can get the Luna stage clear in Imaginarium Theater, I will get the Luna stage clear in Imaginarium Theater. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go to a lower difficulty. If I can clear difficulty 4 solo on Stygian Onslaught, I will do that. Difficulty 5 doesn't really matter to me as much. I thought this Onslaught I might be able to do it, and I got really close. But at the end of the day, if I can't do it, I can't do it, and I don't care. I don't mind. As long as I can get what I set my goals to, then I'm okay. I don't need to be on any leaderboards or like speed runs or anything. I'm having fun with the game the way I'm playing it. 3 endgame versions of content. Now, yeah. That is definitely nice, because I think up until... When did they introduce Imagineering Theater? Throughout Natlan, right? So before that, it was only Abyss. Meanwhile, Honkai has so many different modes, and even like weekly modes. You have your Currency Wars, you have your Divergent Universe, you have Memory of Chaos, Apocalyptic Shadow, Pure Fiction. Then we have this completely new endgame mode now, which I can't even access because you first have to clear all of the other endgame modes perfectly with all stars, which I cannot do, but I do not care about as well in that game. But yeah, we'll have to see where Genshin's trajectory in character balancing will go towards in the future. Is it gonna get worse? Is it gonna like is it gonna be like a curve where like, okay, we had like the beginning of the game, it got increased, like at the beginning of the game it got higher, and then we had like the spike coming in with like Natlan and all that, and now we're maybe like kind of flatlining in the end again, where it's like it's gonna be consistent towards the end? Or is it just gonna be like all the way just straight up at this point? We'll see. If someone isn't naturally suited for Abyss, they can really shine in theater or even Stygian. Yeah, because I think when Stygian, for example, was first introduced, people basically said, while Abyss seems to be more of a check of your vertical investment, being like you have your two core teams, but you've invested a lot into these teams and your characters are very hyper invested in and as optimized as you can get them right now? Or are you somebody who invested horizontally? You have a lot of characters built. They might not all be on the same level. Some are better, some are stronger, but you have the variety of a lot of different characters. While Abyss only needs you to have technically 8 characters that are all pretty strong, theater needs you to have up to 32 different characters if you want to do Luna with all of the bonuses. So there's that. There's definitely a difference. And I would say if you've played long enough, you can probably do both pretty well, obviously, because you have your core teams for like Abyss, but you also obviously had like a lot of time playing, so you probably also have a lot of different characters you invested into. So you have both good invested teams, but you also have a broad variety of characters. I mean, I'm at a point where I think the only 2 elements that I'm still lacking, if they come up in Stygia, in theater, are Cryo and Geo. And Geo has been getting kind of better. Like, you know, I have my Navia, I have my Linnea, I have Albedo. I think those are the only 4 ones I really have built. 3. Navia, Linnea, Albedo. Shilonen. But like Cryo, I'm lacking the most. That's for sure. Soon I have a max crit damage Baron Bunny. Yeah, don't underestimate Ember. Ember can do a lot of damage. Like 10 minutes, no worries, Lily. Take your time. We're probably going to be starting with the book here very soon. There's a lot. We've done a lot of Genshin yapping. We still have to play Genshin later as well, guys. We have to do the entire event today. I am not gonna stop until we're done with the entire event. I will be here until the event is done. You've been enjoying NTE? It's been pretty fun. I don't think it's a game that I would probably be streaming. It's something I just play on my own and enjoy it for now. But I'm having fun with it. It's really cool. Very interesting. A lot of different mechanics in the game. A lot of content. And all the different systems they have in. Got a bit lucky, if you could say it like that. Lily was there on Friday. Definitely put a lot of work into the world. It seems like it. Are you playing it as well, Enzo? Have you tried it out or watched some people play it? Enzo, you know what that means. Playing on your tablet? You know what that means, Enzo. We should play it together, huh? I have made an American account this time, actually, and not a European account, so we could play together. I'm on American servers. We could play together. But I keep getting sidetracked. Oh, same. Absolutely. I'm also somebody, like, if I get a side quest or, you know, one of those spin-off stories, I do those first before I do the main quest. And I've been getting sidetracked with the map exploration. I have bridge crossings at 97%. I am missing one side quest, which is currently still locked for me. I have every other region at least at 50% exploration. I have done every spin-off quest that I can do so far. There's still a bunch of side quests in the other areas that I still need to do. I basically finished almost every anomaly commission. I think I'm missing like 3 or 4 anomaly commissions, and then I'm done with all of them. So yeah, I've been getting sidetracked a lot as well. So therefore, that's fair. So what happened the other day is I do like the fact NTE doesn't seem to have a 50-50 on their limited banners. So if you get a 5-star on a limited banner, it is the character on the banner. Right now being Nanali, and like in 2 days I think it's Hattori. I have gotten so fucking lucky already so far in NTE, which is insane. When I started playing, when it came out, I got Nanali in 40 pulls. It's a territory for some reason only works with the pen, so couldn't really pay it. It's fair. As long as it's working now, that's good. But so yeah, I got Nanali in like 40. Which was already absolutely insane. Then on Friday, I played a little bit more, and I was like, I have a few polls, you know. I've done a few polls every now and then as well. I was at like 20, 30 pity. I do a 10 poll, I get another Nanali. And in that 10 pull as well, I got 6 free free dice on top, like 6 free red dice on top, which allowed me to do another 10 pull. So I do another 10 pull, and I got another Nanali. Like, what? So I would say I have a pretty strong Nanali at this point. I also got her arc yesterday as well, or the day before. So yeah, my Nanali is pretty good right now, I would say. And hopefully I can also get Hattori, because Hattori seems to work super well with Nanali together. from what I've seen so far. I wouldn't say that Nanalie so far is my favorite character in the game, but she's super fun to play. I mean, if any of y'all know me in any way, I think you could guess which character is my favorite in the game so far. Hathor is fun to play. Yeah, I've played her a little bit in like the trials and stuff. I don't have her, but yeah, I enjoyed Hathor. But I think you guys could probably guess very easily who like my favorite character is so far in the game, if y'all just know me a little bit. I definitely grabbed them as the first character when you do like your first 50 pulls on the standard banner, and you can like choose a free 5-star from the standard rotation. That was the character I picked up first immediately. But no, I've been enjoying it for sure. I'm already working on building 2 teams right now. Building Sakiri. I do like Sakiri. I have her as well, but that was not the character I picked first. I did get Sakiri at like 73 on the standard banner. She was the first character I got just by pulling from the standard banner. But the character I chose from the first 50 pulls is somebody else. And then the character I chose from the free one we got in the mail works well together with that first character. And I really like their design as well and their combat. First pull is Edgar. Ooh. I already have all like 6 awakening levels on Mint and Adler. Edgar is cool as well. Like I think Edgar is the only like actual full healer we have so far, unless I think you have GUN's first awaken, or like you have GUN awakened and you chose the one that heals. I think she has one that heals. But other than that, like Edgar is the only healer. Adler is a shielder, and that's really it, what we have right now. So nah, but Enzo, if you know me, it had to be Fadia. It had to be Fadia. I had to grab Fadia. Also, welcome back, Lily. Moths. Yeah, I grabbed Fadia from that, and then on the free one we got from the mail, I chose Daffodil. Like, she annoys me. Fair. I have her at bond level 6 in my second apartment right now. Yeah, so I guess like 5-star wise, I have Fadia, Daffodil, Sakiri, and Nanalie. Multiple Nanalies. I legit, I was fucking flabbergasted. When I was doing those polls, I was fucking flabbergasted. The first one, I was already surprised because again, it was like 30 or 40 pity. But when I did the second 10 pull and I saw that S rank pop up again, I was like, what the fuck? is going on right now? I cannot believe what's happening. How the fuck is that possible? 4 polls between, I get 2 Nanalise. Yeah. All right, I'll have to be right back, guys, real quick. And then once I'm back, it is time to continue to read. And as I said today, after the reading is done, I'm going on Genshin, and we are not gonna stop today until the event is done. We're gonna play the entire event today. Don't care how long it takes. We'll be live until it's done. Even if it takes me like 7 hours. I don't care. Alright, but I'll be right back and then we'll hop into the book. We've done a lot of yapping already today. I'm already an hour late. We already started at 12 a.m. instead of at 11 p.m. And it's 1:30 a.m. and we've only been yapping. We gotta do the book soon. All right, I'm back. Here we go. Just all the games that I've been playing, all the stuff we've been yapping about. Don't even get me started on the other game that I've been playing recently. We don't talk about that now as well. That would take a while. We have a book to read. Lily, you know what game I'm talking about. The one that recently came out that I bought. No more yapping. And so we have a lot of book yapping we can do. That's also a form of yapping, right? Or do you guys not want to continue the book today and just yap and play Genshin? Is that what we're doing now? No book? Either is fine. I already have the next book as well already. Like, we gotta finish this one so we can go to the next one. Exactly. Like we already have the next one picked out as well. So we gotta finish this one so we can do this one. All right.
Shall we begin?
All right, let's go then. So we're at chapter 18. Let's see, we might go to chapter... Oh. We might do chapter... yeah. We could do up to chapter 20, maybe? Yeah. Let's see. Hollis looked down into Eloisia's eyes, as if for her approval. She chewed her lips in anticipation and then gave a small nod, and he cupped a hand around her face. She felt her breath quicken as he angled her chin up so that she met his gaze again. And she saw something there that flooded her with terrified hope. A complicated mix of fear, certainty, and urgency. Let's go! Let go! Came a shout that Aloysia couldn't place, but she obeyed, jerking her chin out of Hollis's hand. Crow, you don't want that. It's not dragon nip. It's got dragon nip, came Lan's voice again. Take this instead. No, Lingui, back off. Oh, come on, you dumb bird. Crow's here, Aloysia said vacantly, as she and Hollis continued to stare at each other, with searching and reluctance in both their faces. Witch Papplewick! Lan shouted, and Aloysia jumped now as if burnt. A little help with your friend? Aloysia threw Hollis an apologetic look and hurried over to where Crow and Littlewick were tussling over one of the barbecued flounders. What was just as Lan had said, green with that same herby something Sheikah had rubbed on the fish that morning. And suddenly, Aloysia could place the smell. Nepeta dracaria. Dragon nip. Crow, did they not feed you at the other end again? Aloysia said, flustered. Crow looked up as she spoke, blinked his beady black eyes as if he'd just woken up. Yes, but that was days ago, and the pickings for anything more filling than a worm around here are slim, he said, and his familiar nasal voice gave Aloysia a rush of affection. I'm a growing boy. Hey. In the seconds Crow has been distracted by Aloysia, Littlewick had swallowed the remains of the flounder in one gulp. The cat dragon dropped into his haunches with satisfaction and gave a smoky burp. Crow was furious. Aloysia reached into her wand pocket and pulled out a slightly squashed cannel knut. Here, she said to Crow. Trust me, it's even better than a tea cake. Crow shot Littlewick a resentful look and took the cannel knut in his beak, before fluttering up to pick at it on Aloysia's shoulder. She sagged slightly under his weight. He'd been gone so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to have him there. Are you sure you've been underfed? She said doubtfully, but he was too busy eating, noisily and industriously, to reply. As he did, Aloysia realized that something had scratched the side of her neck. She thought at first it was a talon and turned to complain, but then, twisting her head at an awkward angle, she saw the culprit. Blurry as if it was close, protruding from the small sack tied to Crow's leg. It looked like a white holly leaf, nestled around a triangle of 3 bright red berries. What's that? She asked Crow slowly. A horrible thought had crossed her mind, and she didn't want it confirmed even as she needed to know the truth. Was what? He asked her, through a mouthful of Knut. The twig, she said, apprehensive. She gave Hollis a sharp look, and he came to remove the bag from Crow's leg. The berries? Careful not to scratch his fingers, Hollis extracted the leaf from the bag and held it up. It was one of several attached to her gnarled, narrow white twig. Is there any more flounder? Crow asked, looking hopeful. Crow? Aloysia pressed. Hollis was already reading the small, beribboned scroll that had been packed with the twig. In the lantern light, Aloysia saw him turn the same color as the leaf. It's the Guardian, he said, gesturing with the berry-covered stick and confirming Aloysia's worst fear. It's taken on its winter colors. Already? Aloysia choked out. But we were supposed to have until spring. It's not even winter tide for days. We've barely been gone 2 weeks. Crow? She demanded again. I don't know what to tell you, he said, hunching meekly. I got back and it had already happened. Everyone was running around like headless cockatrices. No one knows why or what to do. They don't have a clue. And you're really not gonna like this. Go on. Sassafras asked the council to redouble their efforts. Are you using even more magic? Aloysia cried, clutching the wand in her hand with fury. Don't they know that they're making it worse? They're probably the reason it's taken on its winter colors so quickly. Them and me, she thought, flooded with guilt and you. I'm the one who started this. Is it dead? This from Hollis. Aloysia's whole body braced. No, said Crow, and Aloysia breathed out heavily. They're making a big snog and dance about how it's not dead. Don't worry, I know what you're gonna say. I didn't just take their word for it. I went home and saw for myself. It's in a bad way, obviously. It's breathing. That's something, said Hollis weakly. Your guardian's sick? Lan said, looking shocked and annoyed. Aloysia and Hollis shared a look of chagrin. She might as well know. Well, that's what the spell's for, said Aloysia with a defeated sigh. I wish you told me before, said Lan, aggrieved, and Aloysia could see her mind working quickly. But I guess I didn't exactly make that easy. How long does it have? It's all speculation at this point, Crow answered uncomfortably. Great Granny Ethelba thinks a week. Ivy says the council privately agrees. Personally, I think we'd be lucky if if it's that long now they're using more magic. Aloysia's chest felt heavy. Her breathing was shallow. Days? We have days. Well then, what are we all standing around here for? Said Lan, forceful as ever. We've got to get back in the air. Grub's up, Sheikah announced, turning around with a huge tray full of dishes and dressings. She blinked when she saw Crow, oblivious to who he was or where he'd come from, but as always, thrilled to meet a new animal friend. Well, hi, sweetie, she cried, taking a hand off the tray and leaning over to tickle him under the chin. As he recoiled, she leaned further and everything on the tray slid forward precariously. Reinahin, she panicked, and Aloysia threw her hands out and caught the edge, steadying it with a clash of porcelain. Sheikah giggled and then sighed with relief. That was close. Everyone was looking at Sheikah, and at the spread of sausage, grill pulsa, she told them earlier, hot bread rolls, vegetable skewers, and springy, salty grilled cheeses. Hollis' stomach rumbled again. Lingui yowled with exhaustion. Fine, Lan relented. You can catch me up while we eat. 1 second. A short time later, Aloysia's plate was the only one that still had food on it, since she'd been doing most of the talking. Everyone was wrapped in woven blankets and arranged on 2 logs either side of a small campfire. At her feet, Littlewig was stretching and basking in the flames, warmth in his sleep, while opposite, Lingui was sprawled in front of Lan on her front, her eyes drifting closed as she nibbled hot smoked herrings out of Sheikah's hand. Crow, meanwhile, was on second helpings, perched on the end of Hollis and Aloysia's log. He was happily tucking into diced gulposa and gravadlax. Sheikah had excused herself to get the gravadlax around the time Aloysia had gone to the part of her story where the Guardian had collapsed onto her cottage. Their new friend had returned with red eyes and a face that shone in the firelight. Lan, being Lan, had listened silently and impassively, slicing the rectangles of white cheese on her plate with focused efficiency. Aloysia could feel the tension coming off her like steam. This is bad, Lan said, when Aloysia had finished speaking and could finally concentrate on her now stone-cold grilled poster. This is very bad. If you told me you needed patty berries for your last ingredient, could have traded for some before they were all gone. I didn't know that's what we were going to Jodver for. Gone? Repeated Hollis warily. He and Aloysia shared a concerned look. That's right, Lan was saying. When I was confirming where to find the River Weavers, I also picked up some rumors. A shepherd from Gipfelburg was on the market for all the patty berries he could get his hands on. He thought he was being discreet, going through back channels, but my people, Aloysia saw her glance at Sheikah, shamefaced. Covert historical preservationists. We talk. Like with the mercenary. Information is currency. Hollis was already rummaging in his pockets for his whittling knife and a fresh chunk of wood. His eyes stayed almost mostly focused on what Lan was saying, but his hands hacked away. But there's still some in Jodver, aren't there? Said Aloysia, her throat tight with desperation. They farmed them. They have to be. No, said Lan, shaking her head. It's the first place this guy went. And it wasn't enough. Patty berries, Sheikah said, her forehead creasing thoughtfully. Dietary staple of the heart mouse. Until the farmers started spraying it with that awful stuff a couple of years back. The old spoilsports. You know, it's the only thing heart mice eat. You don't deserve to be run out of town just so you can have more pattyberry crumbles. They ran them out of town, Louisa said. Where did they go? Sightings of them are unusual nowadays, Sheikah said, looking at her as if to say, you're really interested in this? Right now? At least where I'm from, they're tiny. And nocturnal and skittish. That's why people call them little skitmouse. Skitmouse, said Lan in a tone that said, this is too much. Skitmouse, you're sure? Not titmouse or flitmouse? Skitmouse, I'm certain. And a titmouse is a bird, said Sheikah, looking faintly hurt. I know I'm a bit of a klutz sometimes, but I'm good at what I do. Why is this so important all of a sudden? Wait there. Lan heard inside despite Lingui's protestations at being comfy and not wanting to get up, meowing and tugging on her leash before ultimately padding along with her. A few moments later, Lan returned with the yammerphone in one hand and one of the copper cylinders in the other. She played the recording on the device, and all they heard a child's voice punctuated with slapping noises. Aloysia gathered that these were the words of a clapping game. See the little skit mouse. I heard it in the Casticombe. One of the kids at the bathhouse was teaching it to her sister. It's a playground game. The new fad among the 4 to 7-year-olds of Gipfelberg. You think Gipfelberg is where the heart mice went? Said Hollis, his tone unconvinced. There were 2 little wooden figures on the log beside him already. I do, Lan said with a firm nod. And where the heart mice are, that's where we will find the patty berries. Like Sheikah said, it's the only thing they eat. If there were patty berry plants in Gipfelberg, their shepherd would have found them first, said Hollis, looking dismayed and disbelieving. We don't have time to go running up and down the mountain. That's the last place we need to be. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, said Aloysia, looking down at the dessert tray on the ground in front of her with the leftovers of the Jordberkete, a kind of flan topped with cream and strawberries. Patty berries are like strawberries. The wild varietal is very different from the cultivated one. Smaller, more delicate, tastes completely different. I mean, it's a different color. She looked around at the others. My point is, most people wouldn't recognize the wild type as being patty berries. Not to mention that the wild varietal retained their thigmotropic defenses. Sheikah opened her mouth to say something, and Aloysia rushed out apologetically. It just means a plant's movement in response to contact. In this case, the wild plant has leaves that close around the berry to protect it, which are only opened by a specific kind of touch. So you'd have to know what you were looking for, and where, and go right up and stroke it in just the right way. Yeah, she wished her eyes hadn't met Hollis's. To even know it was there, let alone recognize it, the Gipfelberg shepherd could have missed pockets of it right under his nose. And you can definitely use the wild varietal, Hollis confirmed, now chopping away at a third piece of wood. Yes, Aloysia nodded as she uncrumpled the spell's entry from the pocket of her dress. She held it up, and Hollis frowned at it uncomprehendingly. If anything, it's more potent. That's better for us. We wouldn't need nearly as much of it. I still think it's too much of a risk that we'll get all the way up there and find none of it, Hollis said. You know Gipfelberg is at the top of the mountain. It is? Aloysia said with a concerned look at Lan. He's exaggerating, Lan said irritably. It's the highest settlement on the mountain where the river is wide enough to support all the people and the transport back downriver. There are boats? Aloysia asked, hopeful for a quick route to their new destination. Only if you don't mind getting up the mountain in a leisurely 6 days, Lan replied. Right, so by the time we get there, we could already be too late. You heard, Crow. Less than a week, said Hollis, growing increasingly frustrated. We have no latitude for mistakes. We can't just change our plan based on rumors. How do we know we can trust these people you're dealing with? This part was aimed at Lan. Aloysia looked from one to the other. She took his meaning, but wasting time traveling to somewhere recently reported to have none of what they were looking for came with risks of its own. Yeah, you don't trust me, tall, dark, and sullen. It's getting old, said Lan snappishly. I went into the axolotl's den with you two, gave away a priceless artifact for you, shared my yurt with you, flew you halfway up a mountain. Further than that, if you want to get technical about it, I am still offering to help you guys. When will it be enough? She turned to Aloysia. If what I heard is true, and I heard it from multiple sources that I happen to trust, this shepherd has bought up everything he can find from here to the next valley. You said yourself your wild variety is probably there. And if it isn't, Gipfelbook is still where the guy's been stockpiling the rest of it. We'll just have to negotiate. Alan's eyes sparkled, and Aloysia thought of her at the bathhouse, sitting across from the mercenary. Both Hollis and Lan were looking at Aloysia now, as the deciding voice of the three of them. She was caught between them, looking from the woman she respected to the man whose arms she felt as though she'd just left. But her opinion remained. I say, we go to Gipfelbook, she said heavily. Hollis sagged, avoided her eyes. All right, he said, visibly disappointed, but she could see, with a flash of surprise that quickly turned into guilt, that he was trying to be supportive. If that's what you want. Sorry, she said, touching his knee beside her despite the blanket. He flinched at the contact, and then looked almost immediately regretful. I think it's the right thing to do, she added, managing to keep the hurt from her voice. Me too, blurted Chica, jumping up from her log and narrowly missing a dozing Lingui, who woke up with a start at the noise. Ooh, this is gonna be great! A daring quest to the top of the mountain to save an ailing guardian. I can't wait! With that, she hurried inside, leaving the others looking at each other, mouths agape. She's coming? Aloysia said, expressing what they were all thinking. I guess so, said Lan, looking after Chica, who was shimmying to the cabin door in the lantern light and shaking her head with affection. Wait, how are we all gonna fit on Lingui? As it turned out, Chica had a plan for Lan's concern, but she refused to tell anybody about it until they'd all had a good night's sleep. It'll add to the mystery, she told them, wagging her fingers dramatically as she packed each of them off to a different room of her cabin with a pillow and a cup of water. But I think you're gonna love it. She sings songs before disappearing into the sole ground floor bedroom. It seemed, Aloysia thought, as she trooped upstairs, flanked by a dopey crow and Littlewick, that the cabin had been originally built for an entire family, and she wondered how Chica had ended up living alone here. That, and quietly regretting that she and Hollis wouldn't be sharing a room together. Tonight of all nights, after having been in such close quarters for the rest of their journey. She thought about sneaking down the stained wood hallway to see him after everyone else was asleep, but the presumptuousness made her shrink. She still couldn't quite believe he'd almost kissed her. Part of her wished she had some kind of physical evidence. The thought made her blush. But the possibility of misunderstanding wasn't all that was holding her back. Now that the moment had passed, her mind had begun to rake through all the possible outcomes of kissing Hollis Lancaster, and while there was one foolish, wild impossibility in which her best friend became her sister-in-law, there were many, many more likely scenarios in which she lost both Hollis and her only real friendship. She was increasingly aware that she'd almost gone through with it despite thinking of Ivy first, and the thought flooded her body with guilt and shame. Things being what they were, Aloysia headed to bed with only Crow and Littlewick for company, and drifted to sleep hours later, when she'd finally persuaded her mind to think of anything other than that kiss. Ta-da! Sheikah squeaked, throwing her arms out expansively before stepping aside to reveal an enormous, silvery head. It was dawn, and Sheikah had woken them all with a deafening few notes on the instrument she'd played for the river weavers before leading them down the riverbank just outside the cabin. The company were gathered blearily, in pajamas and slippers, except for Hollis, who'd either slept in just his trousers or had dragged them on at short notice. He was standing a little way from the rest, looking rumpled. He kept yawning, stretching, and scratching his bare stomach as Sheikah spoke. Aloysia was having trouble focusing on what she was saying. "What am I looking at here?" said Lan, moving her head as she tried to take in as much of the beast as she could. Sheikah grabbed her by the hand in a way Aloysia was surprised didn't result in physical violence, and began to talk her through the thing, with a lot of enthusiasm and gleeful clapping. The creature sticking out the water was like an eel, but it was woven from kelp. Water lilies and bulrushes and stippled all over with tiny silver flowers that gleamed when they caught the sun. Its rose gold fin and crest rustled in the breeze. On closer inspection, because they were formed of curtains of a magical plant that closely resembled loose strife. The creature shook itself with a soothing susurration, and a sinuous ripple brought the entire length of its body surging from the water. It was so long that it disappeared around the river bend, and she recognized it. They'd seen it from above. "I know what you're thinking," Sheikah barreled on. "What is an oarfish doing in a river? Isn't it a mesopelagic Oceodromus species?" Aloysia, whose thoughts this early in the morning amounted to, "Look how shiny," tried to appear as if this was anything close to what she was going through her head. "Well, as we all know, little things like traditional habitat and behaviors don't matter when you're a guardian," Sheikah sang, punctuated with excitable jazz hands. "This is mine. Surprise! Don't you love him? Isn't he a handsome boy? Look at you, you handsome boy." She ruffled the beast's flora affectionately, and the oarfish swayed from side to side, splashing water over the river's banks in a way that made Aloysia think new words like flood and drought. A microcosm of the former was playing out around her toes. Lingui hissed at the influx, taking off and flapping in place alongside Lan. "You're a shepherd?" Aloysia said to Sheikah, understanding arriving as she watched the woman playing with her aquatic companion. "Well, yeah, I told you," Sheikah said, half listening, half picking panicked minnows out of the beast's leaves. Aloysia looked at Lan. "Is this something we knew?" In case this was information that had been lost in translation from the conversation outside the shop. Lan widened her eyes at Aloysia, shaking her head subtly and stifling a smile. "Did I not tell you?" Sheikah said, looking back at their blank expressions with a jolt. "That's what I'm doing here. I've come from Sidil Viden. About 3 days that way," she said, pointing. "Well, I know I told you the locals don't like people to stay," Sheikah chattered happily, plucking a paper bag of Kano Knut crumbs from her pocket and feeding some of them to the giant oarfish, who munched away contentedly. "Why did you think they let me borrow this place, you sillies? They might not like magic, but that doesn't mean they want to mess with it. That doesn't mean they want to mess with it." She went on garrulously with a demonstrative 1-2 punch. "You're a witch too?" "Yo, hi Kuro, how you doing?" Aloysia stared at the woman, who was still conspicuously lacking one pointed hat. "Oh, no!" Sheikah burst out with a chuckle. "When I said magic, I meant Rohan here." she said, patting the oarfish warmly. My parents are the magic users. I mean, they wanted me to be, but I just didn't have it, she carried on cheerfully. You know, the gift. She said the last two words with the other people. She said the last two words the way other people might have said, Razmataz. Aloysia looked sideways at Lan to see if this news had given her the same way of sympathy that it had to her, and saw that her cheeks were flushed. It was rare for children of two magical parents not to make the connection to their well. In some cultures, the families had a kind of funeral for the loss. Aloysia looked at Hollis and saw his eyes were on the ground, all casual, stretching replaced by hunched shoulders and a twining jaw. Seeing him there, something struck her that never had before. She had met him as a child, when everything was the way it was, and she was too young to question it. But Hollis and Ivy were born of two magical parents too. She'd never known them make anything of his lack of magical ability as far as Aloysia was concerned. The Longcasters were the picture of what every child wished their parents could be. But that didn't mean Hollis hadn't had any feelings about it. She wondered how easy it would have been to share them in the face of their unbending positivity. You do have the, whatever that thing is, though, Lan was saying, thickly, and she motioned to the instrument in Chica's pocket before clearing her throat. How can you play it if you don't have the magic? What, this little guy? Chica said, looking embarrassed, and she tugged what emerged to be a Waldhorn from her pocket. Aloysia saw there were decorative runes carved into it. This isn't magic, it's just music. Well, not the way I play it, maybe. I'm a zoologist, not a virtuoso. I told you that part, right? She said, uncertainly, then nodded with relief when they assured her she had. Right, well, I was doing fieldwork several years ago on a project with Fossegrims. I made the breakthrough. One of the things that separates magical creatures from non-magical creatures is... They listen? Aloysia said, thinking of tomatoes and stone caps. Well, all creatures listen, sweetie. I mean, they have ears. At least, most of them do. What I mean is, it's the way they respond to music. I've tested all kinds of instruments over the years, and I've found that magical creatures tend to respond best to this old thing of my dad's. Now, it's just a case of figuring out the heart song for every magical creature in existence, like... So, Rohan's coming with us? Lan interjected, before Sheikah could subject them to the close-up version of what had woken them up this morning. Well, he'd better, Sheikah giggled. He's taking us. Aloysia heard Hollis say, his voice trailing away in horror as they looked at the gargantuan beast. Was she talking about riding a guardian? It couldn't be done. And even if it could, the guardians were the closest Tangaroot had to deities. It felt almost blasphemous somehow. But, said Aloysia in disbelief, that's a guardian. My guardian, said Sheikah, tickling the giant oarfish like a cheeky child. As they watched, it bobbed up and down in the water, more flood, more drought, before flicking its crest at Sheikah in a way that poured a torrent onto her head, playfully. Aloysia was stunned to observe. Then, slowly, it half submerged itself so its body was low enough in the river that Sheikah could reach out with one stubby leg and, after a couple of worrying experimental reaches, clamber on. She's not doing what I think she's doing, is she? Lan asked, hand to her forehead, looking seasick without having stepped off dry land into a river. Depends if you think she's straddling a 50-foot oarfish, unwrapping her scarf and swinging it around her head with a look of wild triumph. Aloysia said, her voice leveled by shock. Make her get down, Lan said, turning slightly gray around the edges. She's either gonna get eaten or drowned. She covered her face with shaking hands. Maybe make her get down now, or I'm gonna barf. Sheikah was attempting to ride side saddle when she caught the look from Aloysia and glanced from her to Lan. Her face fell, and she slid jerkily off the oarfish with a splash. Sheikah stomped over and put an arm around the quaking Lan, guiding her and hovering Lingui in the cabin, muttering soothingly in her mother tongue. Aloysia brought up the rear, glancing sideways at the Guardian, which seemed to be waiting benignly for Sheikah's return. Even magic couldn't do that, Aloysia thought, staring at the seemingly tame Guardian. Sheikah may be clumsy, easily distracted, and oblivious, but she also might be some kind of genius. Oh! Came Sheikah's yell from the cabin doorway when she was standing behind Lan, arms wide, turning her head as if taking in the space for the first time. This is why you thought I fished! Why is Sheikah just giving me Lily energy right now? Yeah. Am I wrong though, Lily? No one's going to make you do anything you don't want to, honey. Able to deny. No one's gonna make you do anything you don't want to, honey, said Sheikah soothingly as she stroked Lan's rigid back. They come inside and arranged themselves around the coffee table. Hollis had shrugged on his shirt and was now passing around hot, sweet tea in an attempt to ease the tension. How else can we get up the mountain in time? Aloysia said. I'm really asking. I don't relish the thought of riding that thing either. No offense, Sheikah, but it does look pretty fast. Oh, he is, said Sheikah, nodding fervently. I'd say it will be at the peak in 3 days tops. Aloysia was stunned. It would take almost twice that by cat dragon. And that was without solving the issue of there not being room for all of them. What about the Drammelkins? Said Lan, reverting to the cat dragons. To the cat dragon's technical name in her irritation. They hate water, and that thing's constantly wet. I can't be separated from Lingui. You okay with being away from Littlewick? Which Papawick? What do you mean away? Said Aloysia testily. He goes where I go. Before Aloysia could blink, Lan had dipped her fingers in her glass of water and sprinkled it in the direction of Littlewick, who leapt up, spitting. Lan turned back to the group. The expression on her face said, "Point made." Aloysia shot Lan a glare before hurrying around the table and scooping up Littlewick. He trusts Hollis, she said, looking at Hollis as she resettled on the sofa beside him, Littlewick in her arms. Would you take him with you? What do you mean with me? He said warily. We should all stick together. No, we shouldn't. You had a point last night, said Aloysia, wishing the words last night hadn't taken on a whole new meaning. She dropped her gaze. If we get to Gipfelburg and we're wrong, there's no room for mistakes. By the time we get there, it might even be too late. I say you, Lan, and Lingui take Crow and Littlewick to Yurdva. See if there are any patty berries left there. There are. Send Crow straight back to Tangleroot with those and the skater snare. If they aren't, head straight back home and we'll meet you there. I say you and Lan fly up to Yudvar, Hollis countered. That way, you can stay with Littlewick, and I'll get up to Gipfelbook with Sheikah. I'm starting to think you've got something against my cat dragon, Aloysia said in an attempt to lighten the mood, to take things back to their joke down in Castacombe, but it wasn't working. His face looked pained. Besides, me and Sheikah are the most useful people on this one. Hollis looked hurt, and she felt a stab of guilt, but plowed on. Sheikah can play her wild horn to summon that heart mice, and I have to harvest the patty berries. To even identify the plants, let alone get them to open up, it's a magical botanist's knack. It's exactly the sort of thing I'm here for. Hollis was avoiding her eyes. He looked as though he was struggling to make his peace with what she was saying, or at least to understand. But it could be dangerous, he pressed, shaking his head and looking conflicted. That's why I'm here, to keep you safe. Alicia's heart throbbed at this, and at the pleading look he was giving her. I have a 50-foot guardian on my side, she said, swallowing with the difficulty of it. Don't worry about me. Heart mice don't like sudden movements, Hollis told Aloysia hastily as they stood together on the riverbank. Or bright lights. And Sheikah says you have to wear your shoes on the opposite feet, or they bite. He tried for a mischievous smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm pretty sure that one was a joke, but I still think it'd be safest to try it, preferably with photographic evidence. Anything else I should know? Aloysia said. She'd been going for lightness, but she saw him stiffen slightly. There's one thing, he said, recovering, and he leaned towards her. Her stomach swooped. One of his hands brushed hers at her side. It was just subtle enough that he had plausible deniability. His breath was warm in her ear as he whispered, They really don't like peppermint. And then he stood back, smiling, his eyes flicking from the brim of her hat to meet her gaze. It was the first time in her life she'd actually quailed. Keeping the hat on, huh? He said, with that half smile of his. How would anyone know I was a witch without it? She said, more lightly than she felt. She looked down at herself, and she knew that what he was getting at. Sheikah had ridden her Orphish guardian before and was well prepared with the full wetsuit of thin olive green rubber and a pair of ludicrous matching swim fins. For her part, Aloysia had dug out some outsized fishing wear from the cabin. Knee-high rubber boots and waterproof chest waders over thermal underwear. And under her travel cloak, so the primary concession to her witchhood was, as Hollis had said, the hat. You know you're more than a witch, said Hollis, holding her eyes with rare earnestness. She knew he meant to be kind, but she also didn't expect him to understand. A witch was both what and who Aloysia Papelwick was, and had always been. If she wasn't a witch, she wasn't whole. Her chest panged at the thought of their plan failing, of losing her identity on top of everything she'd already lost. She smiled, and he bent down and kissed her, chastely on the forehead. She flinched. Where had that come from? That wasn't the kind of kiss he'd gone in for last night. Why does it bother you so much? They both heard Sheikah squeak with consternation from a little way away, where she was standing in the grass with Lan and Lingui. Lan's making friends, said Hollis with a clear of his throat, and he squeezed Aloysia's hand without looking at her, and then let go. Attached as always to her witch's wrist, Lingui was playing with Littlewick, lying on her back and blowing white smoke rings over her head for him to jump through. As he leapt into the air, he flapped his wings madly. Occasionally, he landed on her face. "Don't let him learn to fly without me," Aloysia heard herself say out loud. "Strap him down." "Got it," Hollis said dryly. Beside him now, Aloysia searched his face, but he was pretending not to notice. So she drew in a stealing breath and started instead towards her cat dragon. Littlewick was going to be his own challenge. As hard as she was finding it to say goodbye to Hollis, for the next few crucial days, at least he didn't sink his claws into her and yowl. "Just stop whining and hold still," Lan was saying as they approached while waving her hand in Chica's direction. "No," Chica said belligerently. "You can't make me." "This is taking advantage of a blind person," Lan snapped as Chica dodged the point of the wand. Chica hesitated, and it was enough. Lan whipped her wand in a complicated swirling motion that made Chica's legs snap together, her arms to her sides. She steamed gently for a second and relaxed. "What was that?" Chica demanded, wriggling her shoulders experimentally. "What did you do?" While they squabbled nearby, Aloysia crouched down to next to Lingui and Littlewick. Hollis hung back, and Aloysia knew he was giving them a private moment. "Littlewick?" Aloysia said softly. At the sound of her voice, the little ball of fur, who had been standing on his back legs on Lingui's chest, trying to use his wings to line himself up for the next pounce, dropped to his paws, straightened his hindquarters for a jump, and sprang towards her. She caught him in mid-leap, and when she pulled him into her arms, cradling him like she always did, he purred so hard it was almost like a tiny motor car starting. "Only I knew we'd bonded," Aloysia thought anxiously, "and I could sleep at night." Feeling faintly guilty, she held up her wand above his head and forepaws and bounced it between her fingers. He gazed at it fixedly and then struck, his soft paws, claws drawn, batted her hand, coaxing the wand down into his mouth. He held it there for a full minute before Aloysia accepted the hard truth. They still hadn't bonded. "This is silly," she told herself, as the tears pricked her eyes. "I won't be gone long. You probably won't even notice I'm not there. I have to go away for a few days," she said, softly but briskly, not sure whether he was listening or whether he could fully understand her if he was. "Hollis is going to look after you. I'll see you again in Tangleroot. Be good for Hollis. Do what he says. Try to eat something that photosynthesizes as well as your fish. Get a good night's sleep every night. And don't forget who I am while I'm not there." She pinched all the fingers of her wand hands together in an exaggerated movement, and then bopped him on the snoot, like a kiss. And then she stood up and handed him to Hollis. As Littlewick slid down against his chest, she looked into his little, glistening eyes and felt a wave of guilt, and a stab of something like pre-regret. Can't do it. She plunged her hands deep into her pockets to stop her from snatching Littlewick back the minute he made a noise of complaint. Hollis was looking down at the cat dragon apprehensively. He looked up at Aloysia again. The moment stretched out, but Littlewick remained perfectly content. Aloysia stared at her cat dragon, the clenched fists in her pockets relaxing. He's all right. Am I all right with him being all right? Well, that could have been worse, said Hollis with effortful brightness. It could, Aloysia said, arduously keeping the question mark out of her voice. And that is the end of chapter 18. I'm really liking this book now. It's really good. I'm curious if they... So, the next town they're going to is Gipfelburg. Are we gonna have some German in the book now? We already had, like, Swedish, Japanese, French. Are we gonna have German next? I mean, it's gonna be easy for me. Like, the French was fine, the Japanese was kind of hard, the Swedish was hard, but German is gonna be easy. All right. Maybe we will have some Germany in a bit. I don't know. But let's go. Chapter 19. It became apparent what spell Lan had cast on Sheikah from the moment the Orphish Guardian had begun to move. Swerving serpentine through the river. It was a waterproofing spell cast on Sheikah's wetsuit and repelled the spray as if rebounded from a damn wall all over Aloysia behind her. Aloysia wiped the first spritz out of her eyes and considered why Lan hadn't extended her the same kindness. Maybe she hadn't realized that Aloysia was unable to use her own wand, or maybe it was Lan's petty revenge for Aloysia dividing the group rather than letting Lan join Aloysia and Sheikah at the summit. She soon stopped wondering about that or anything else, as every part of her became numbly focused on getting through the last leg of the journey, through the cold of the Orphish sun body under her naively bare hands, through the wet of the river, mostly kept at bay where she wore the fisher wear but soaked clean through her cloak and thermals, and through as they wove past another cluster of houses and the sky began to darken, the lashing near horizontal rain. Only once did Aloysia let her mind stray to the cat dragon flopping somewhere far behind them, weighed down by a complicated witch, an infant cat dragon, and a man who Aloysia, to her shame and frustration, couldn't stop thinking about. When a large black bird briefly interrupted the weak sunlight as it passed over them, and for a second, heart in her mouth, she thought it was Crow, making good on his promise to her as they'd parted ways. I'll be fine. At the first sign of trouble, I'll abandon them and find you. That first night was spent in a riverside barn belonging to the generous non-magical family, who were fascinated by these two strange women traveling by Guardian up to the peak. Their youngest son was visibly disappointed when Aloysia explained that her cat dragon wasn't with her, as the small boy sobbed. Aloysia felt a touch of envy that she wasn't allowed to cry as well. The next day, feeling more foolish than ever and wearing a set of one of the farmer woman's rubber scrubbing gloves to protect her hands, Aloysia reluctantly climbed onto Rohan and set out again. It had been so much easier before she fully understood what she was letting herself in for. Lan's spell was beginning to wear off now. No sooner had they passed through yet another border, the snow piling up along the banks either side of them, than both women began to shudder dangerously. And Aloysia accepted that a warming spell was fast becoming a matter of life or death. She cast it on her thermals and on Sheikah's wetsuit, hoping against hope that wasn't using up the final few drops of Tangleroot Valley's magic, before they'd even finished gathering the spell ingredients. By late afternoon on the second day, the buildings surrounding the river were growing larger, more tightly packed, and noticeably grander. Sheikah looked over her shoulder, face alight, grinning broadly, and nodded. Gipfelburg. So we'll eat this, pick up some warm clothes, and then you can summon the heart mice? Aloysia asked, bent awkwardly over a white plate with a deep well in the middle, as she tried to neither splash nor slurp the red-brown sauce from it. As soon as they had arrived, Sheikah had played a heart song to Rohan that Aloysia didn't recognize. It seemed to indicate he was free to catch himself some dinner in the lake, before she strong-armed Aloysia into a place called Heuriger, where they could find sustenance on their own. It turned out to be an inn specializing in the local wine, which should have felt homely, rustic, and intimate. Instead, inside the wood-paneled room, they'd found serving staff dressed in identical uniforms that included white gloves and a woman in a ball gown playing a 41-string harp. For Aloysia, its sole attraction was the warm fire. Now, Sheikah giggled and nearly spat her own fiaka goulash across the table. You're so dry, she said, referring not to how reassuringly cozy they'd both become since seating themselves side by side in front of the hearth. Aloysia looked at her expectantly. Well, sweetie, the Waldhorn can be a noisy little beggar, she said, patting it on the bench beside her like a good dog. But this is Gipfelburg. It's not gonna be heard all over the city. Aloysia frowned. So what do we do? Well, we could try to get it played on the wireless, Sheikah suggested after a moment. On the wireless? Okay, yes, the wireless is too public. We need to be stealthy, Sheikah said, her eyes darting around as if one of the other customers might be one of the shepherd's spies. Not draw too much attention. And besides, we just want a few specimens and to monitor. We don't want a citywide exodus like that fella with the pipe from Saxony. Saxony. The pipe from Saxony. It's spelt different, but I know what they're referring to. Oh my fucking god. She let out a low whistle. Nahin ham aise nahi. I thought you said there weren't many heart mice left. Not where I'm from, but if you're right, this could be where all their food source on the mountain is. Aloysia nodded. Well, we can't just wander the streets playing the thing every few feet, she said after another thoughtful pause. Why not? Said Sheikah. I'm serious. I'm well practiced at their summoning heart song. It was easy once I realized I just needed to combine the one with the deer, for deer, and the one for mice. Come on. We'll be like traveling bards. It's the perfect cover. Hidden in plain sight. The mere suggestion made Aloysia fear for her sense of hearing, and that they'd be quickly reported for disturbing the peace. How would you usually do this? She said tactfully. For your fieldwork. Locate your subjects, I mean. Well, normally, I guess I'd start with the camouflage, Sheikah said, and her all-green outfits finally made sense to Aloysia. Can't befriend our little buddies if we start by scaring the bejesus out of them. Aloysia nodded. Then I head into the preferred habitat and do some good old-fashioned tracking. I look for signs like droppings, paw prints, evidence of predation, Sheikah went on, checking them off on her fingers, and with each one flicking a touch more sauce. But that's the information we don't have, isn't it? We need them to help us locate their habitat and the stuff they predate on. Aloysia listened to this with dwindling morale. The street bard's idea was fast beginning to look like their only option. Heart mice, you know. So fascinating, Sheikah was saying, enthused by her subject. They're like the pigeons of the ground. Riddled with disease and like to relieve themselves on everything? Aloysia quipped, but dully. No, silly, said Sheikah with a giggle, because in the same way that pigeons navigate by the world's magnetic field, she used her knife and fork to draw lines of magnetism in her sauce, which immediately disappeared. Heart mice navigate by the world's magical field. She speared another chunk of beef and chewed on it, and then added brightly, Isn't that interesting? Aloysia stared at her. Do pigeons tend to congregate more where there's more stronger magnetic fields? He asked. No, Sheikah laughed, like taking a slurp of her drink. They're not dirty, great lumps of iron being suckered into the mud by a big magnet. They have these special particles in their beaks that work essentially like a compass. Aloysia slumped again. Maybe this wasn't going to be as helpful as she thought. Now, heart mice, that's a different story, Sheikah chattered. They're a clever little magical creature. In evolutionary terms, their survival depended on being close to a magic source. And they're a timid, anxious little bunch. So you will often find heart mice within a reasonable range of a magical well. There are even some species who nest directly in the coat of a suitable guardian. Aloysia beamed. She looked down at her plate, at Sheikah's. It was everything she could do not to throw down her cutlery and run. Sheikah was still munching contently. Aloysia watched her with an affectionate smile, waiting to see the moment of her own when her own words dawned. Oh! Sheikah leapt up, throwing her arms into the air with excitement, jolting the table and sending both plates of fiaca goulash sliding into Aloysia's lap. They hurried out onto the pavement, feeling lightly toasted by the fire and warmed still more by their excitement, and as they rushed around the corner that the maître d'art had told them sniffily led into the direction of what he'd called the style quarter, they debated heading straight for the Gipfelbook well. But by the time they'd stumbled down the next street and came out on a small square ringed with boutiques, both of them were shivering again. Aloysia ducked into the nearest shop, Sheikah following close behind her, and they emerged 10 minutes later, head to toe in fresh, warm layers. In the interests of camouflage against the snow, both women were wearing entirely white, beginning with winter coats and boots and ending with a bobble hat and a woolen witch's hat, which Sheikah observed as they left the shop had been stitched with hitherto unseen snowflakes. They had exchanged their soaked, threadbare canvas packs for their tiny, white leather ones that were sold as bottomless. They could hold everything they brought with them, despite being half the size of their originals, and they even felt lighter. Aloysia had already confirmed the clothes were enchanted with spells for fit by the way they'd twisted flatteringly to her body as she tried them on, loosening a seam here, removing a button there. But by far the best part was that every item in the boutique was also bespelled for warmth. As they stepped out into the chill, Aloysia felt the same swath of coziness as when she pulled a blanket around her. Their success had come at quite literal cost, however. The two women were now fresh out of stone camps, and Aloysia had precious else left for future trades. The 4 stops that it took the Gipfelbook cable car to reach the Quelleplatz, home of the well, took so long that the sky was pink before they glided to a halt, waited for the curved glass door to unseal itself, and flung themselves down the steps. Still, the view had been almost worth it. At its peak, they'd seen from their capsule an expanse of the city that included not only its many terraced shops and houses, pitched roofs sprinkled with snow like powdered sugar, but in the distance, Nistenheim Palace, home of Gipfelburg's royal family. So beautiful that Chica had called Aloysia over to see it. The enormous black-roofed central dome, flanked by two turquoise cupola towers, rose out of the cityscape at 3 times the height of the next tallest structure. Here and there, gold detailing glinting in the sunset where the snow had shifted. Gazing down at it, Aloysia's heart had squeezed with fear that she was probably about to defy several edicts from something so intimidating. Their wins at the boutique, for comparison, a building she could have covered with their thumb at this distance, seemed suddenly too pale and fade, replaced with the creeping sense that what she was trying to do here was just too big for her, and that she needed a grown-up. This was only compounded as the two women reached the Quelleplatz itself, which was like nothing Aloysia, or, judging by the confused, overwhelmed look on her face, Chica had ever seen. The well itself, of course, was several times taller than Aloysia was, and fitted with a gleaming red domed lid that reminded her of the palace. Golden faces, a cross between a gargoyle and a door knocker in appearance, decorated it, spewing the magical liquid showily into friezes of buildings, plants, and silhouettes in the manner of a fountain. The rest of the courtyard was more like a sculpture garden, soaring, numinous structures, statues of kings, queens, and prominent witches and wizards. Inset in one wall were several water-powered automatons depicting scenes of dragons and nature and festivals that jerked with movement as the water poured. But what stood out to both of them most was how busy the place was. Overrun not only by crowding tourists, artists, and refreshment sellers, but by the local watch. If they were to play the Waldhorn here, they'd definitely draw attention to themselves. They'd only get one chance. How do you feel about a little light disturbing the peace? Chica asked mischievously. Aloysia stared, feeling the prickle of apprehension creep up her neck. I've got this, Chica told her with a reassuring smile. Trust me. Aloysia swallowed, tightened her fist around her wand in her pocket to steady herself, and nodded. It was an ugly noise at first, and several people jerked their heads and covered their ears, even the ones wearing earmuffs. A nearby watchwoman looked up, her face pinched with displeasure. Aloysia suspected that she was waiting to see whether this would turn into music or some kind of protest. And then, the strangled strains of the Waldhorn shifted into something that sounded like it was happening on purpose. And the heart mice arrived. Tiny, scurrying creatures with fur like spun gold and miniature, velvet-covered antlers. They reminded Aloysia of a stampede she'd once read about in a library book, but on a much smaller scale. Or maybe it was earthbound starlings by the way they moved together as one rippling shape. The rippling shape grew. Chica had stopped playing, but still more heart mice emerged, from bushes and holes at the bottom of the walls and streaming over the back fence. Most of the watch were sweeping their batons ineffectually through the horde, attempting to perform the proper wand work to disable the magical alarm that someone had pulled in their panic, or puffing out their chests, calling, "Stand back!" and attempting to corral or, in one or two cases, reassure distressed tourists. Oh yeah, we got German. I just read ahead a little bit. Guys, we got German. But the watchwoman nearest Aloysia and Chica had stilled in mid-step, looked around her slowly, fastidiously, and watched how the first few of the heart mice had reached Chica and begun to form a ring around her. "Halt!" she shouted in a local language, but it needed no translation. "Im Namen des Gesetzes," meaning in the name of the law. Chica grabbed her things and started to run. Aloysia and the heart mice swept after her. At first, Aloysia wasn't sure why they weren't following the heart mice, and then she remembered the way Chica had fed Rohan all the way along their journey. One heart song for summoning, she thought, and another for feeding. They would have to lead the horde away from the courtyard, lose the watchwoman, and then find somewhere to play the heart song. "Stop!" shouted the watchwoman behind them. "Im Namen der königlichen Familie." In the name of the royal family. Okay. Did she just say familia? Shouted Aloysia over the drumming of hundreds of tiny paws as they hared out of the gate and down a narrow pedestrian street. Heart mice flooded the pavement and the road like family? She had a hunted feeling, a suspicion that demanded to be dismissed. "Han!" shouted Chica, looking strained as she nodded fervently. "And Königlichen?" "What's Königlichen?" Aloysia yelled back, whipping round to see the watchwoman stumbling through the sea of mice in hot pursuit. "That is," Chica cried, flinging her arm out to indicate a poster on the side of a building as they pounded past. It had a faded look, as if it had been put up for some kind of celebration and then forgotten. The wording read unintelligibly to Aloysia, 30 Jahre verheiratet. Es lebe die königliche Familie. Married for 30 years, long live the royal family. The photograph, unmistakably, was of the royal family. "Stop," Aloysia mentally translated the watchwoman's cry. "In the name of the royal family." Chica took up the Waldhorn again. It was an excessively squeaky, breathless affair as she ran, and Aloysia waited for it to resolve into music, as it always had before, but it quickly became clear that Chica couldn't run and play at the same time. All the while, the watchwoman was gaining. Behind her, their badges glinting in the streetlights, a handful of others from her unit had joined her. As she ran, Aloysia pulled out her wand. She wasn't sure what she was going to do with it, or even whether she should still do it could still do anything. She had visions of bespelling the woman's bootlaces to tie themselves together, of making her hat fall over her eyes, or her baton turn itself against her. Aloysia raised her wand and, whipping her head around to look over her shoulder, directed at the watchwoman, who lifted her eyebrows in alarm. And then the flood of heart mice changed direction, and they were swarming towards the watch, who were tripping and falling. Once on the ground, the heart mice stampeded over them. The watchwoman tried to raise her head and nearly took up an antler on her nose. The watch quickly realized they were better served wrapping their arms around their heads and lying still until the danger had passed. On the wind, Aloysia heard the dying strains of the Waldhorn. As the wave of heart mice thinned around her, she darted down the street and found Chica off to her right, flat on her front on the pavement where she must have fallen. As Aloysia reached her, she saw that Chica's eyes were closed, and she was breathing with determined steadiness, one arm tucked under her, fist drawn to her chest. "Are you all right?" Aloysia panted. I'm fine, Sheikah mumbled to the ground, and then she pushed herself up by her elbows, and extended her hand to Aloysia, who moved to pull her up, and saw there was something in her fist. This little pinky's going to need some TLC. Aloysia, Sheikah, and the heart mouse that Sheikah had caught tucked themselves up against the trunk of a shiver pine in a park several minutes' run from where Aloysia had found them. At this time of night, it was sprawling, dark, and uninhabited enough to make a passable hideout. That, and it was a likely home of the wild pattyberry. There, Pinky, Sheikah cooed, and she scratched the tiny heart mouse behind its ears, around the front of them, and then in soft loops around its antlers. She'd been doing this for almost 15 minutes, and the furry creature had gone from trembling so hard that its whiskers vibrated and that Aloysia could see its little heart beating in its chest, to opening and closing its eyes in such a lazy, contented way that she feared it might fall asleep. Okay, think she's ready, Sheikah said calmly, and she lifted the white one. Haven't you got a muffler or something in there? Aloysia interjected, gesturing to Sheikah's pack on the ground, and then looking anxiously around in case someone would hear. Straight mute, Sheikah corrected. No, and even if I did, it would affect the higher harmonics of the song. We're going to need those. Aloysia flexed her fingers. It was dangerous, playing at full volume in a public place, but they had seen no evidence of anyone on their way through the park, and to use magic now would be risky too. So she nodded at Sheikah and began to play. This heart song was trickier. Around the fourth or fifth attempt, Aloysia was so worried they'd be caught she was bouncing from foot to foot, beginning to fear it would never work. But just as she would lose all hope, the heart mouse jerked its tiny nose up, fixed its beady black eyes on Sheikah, waggled its whiskers, and darted off. Oh! It was harder than they thought to follow a single heart mouse through the park in the pitch black. Where the horde might have worked together, slaloming along a route wide enough for several hundred of them at once, one alone didn't need to trouble itself whether its path would accommodate the humans trying to follow it. It scampered into the shadows quicker than Sheikah could have grabbed her things, and Aloysia was suddenly giving chase alone. In less than a minute, the heart mouse had found a fence, burrowed down into a hole at the bottom, and vanished. In a panic, Aloysia cast about for an exit, and it was hard to tell fence from gate in the black. In a moment of delirium, she even threw herself at the fence and scrabbled against it, tried to find a handhold. It was no use. A panting sound behind her announced Sheikah's arrival, accompanied by the swinging hand lantern that she'd used to light their way from the farmhouse to the barn they'd slept in on their way here. Sheikah had the lantern above her head, so it cast a harsh light onto the snow in front of her. Find the prince. The hour was late enough and the area poorly lit enough that Aloysia and Sheikah saw almost no one as they tracked the heart mouse. Its prints in the snow, occasionally interrupted but simple to recover with Sheikah's expertise, led them down several residential streets and onto a second park. Eventually, a hole straight down into the snow and a soft crunching sound told Aloysia and Sheikah they'd found what they were looking for. Aloysia's chest tightened with trepidation. Let's just hope this isn't the only heart mouse in the world with an eclectic palette, Sheikah said, holding the lantern above their heads as Aloysia knelt in the snow. She took a deep breath and scrubbed away the top layer of her new wool gloves. As the white obscurity cleared, she found a humble-looking plant, green and slender with many leaved. Unlike its botanical opposite, a non-magical plant known colloquially as the touch-me-not, the pattyberry's resting state was with its leaves folded inward. Not the most efficient arrangement for a plant to capture sunlight, but the current leading theory was that it made up the shortfall by feeding on magic directly. But there were several magical plants that presented in this way, especially when protecting themselves against the onslaught of snow. The defining factors of the pattyberry were, first, winter berries that emerged pink, but turned bright blue after the snow had chilled the bitterness from them, like sloe. Second, the plant's response to touch. A simple brush, as in passing, would leave the pattyberry unmoved. But a skilled magical botanist, and presumably the average heart mouse, knew just the right rhythm to drum against the stem, causing the leaves to open up. Try to harvest the plant whole, or rip the berry from its leaves without the step, and it would blacken before your eyes. Moment of truth, Aloysia murmured to Sheikah, who looked at her nervously and nodded. Aloysia peeled the glove from one hand and felt the slim, delicately haired stem in the other, and played her bare fingers against it. Nothing happened. And then, slowly, the leaves parted, like a butterfly's wings, all along the length of the plant. And there, near the top, was a thin line of tiny berries the size of apple pips, but clustered like the common cuckoo pint. They were blue. Those are the berries? Sheikah asked, hugging the lantern to herself in anticipation and blocking out almost all of the light before realizing and releasing it again. Tell me, those are the berries. There was a rustling sound, and their heart mouse emerged from its tunnel in the snow, snaked around the stem, and picked off a double pawful of berries, which it gnawed on, happily. Sheikah's eyes lit up. There, the berries, Aloysia smiled, and Sheikah threw her arms around her. The night was long and arduous. Aloysia had never operated the shrub slice, a small silver magical botanical tool similar in shape to a barber's razor, without the use of her wand before. And she lost a few good berries before she was able to mimic by hand the movement she'd only ever watched it make. Sheikah's job was to hold the lantern. The harvest was close, detailed work, and even in a bright light after a few hours, Aloysia's eyes were strained and sore. But she kept working, squinting through the stinging and prickling, and by the time the first flush of orange permeated the sky and Sheikah slumped against the nearest shiver pine and put out the lantern, Aloysia had emptied every pattyberry in the patch. They had done it. They had everything they needed for the spell to save the Guardian and to protect Tangleroot Valley. Thank you, Aloysia told Sheikah quietly. Beatific peace descending as she crouched into the wet grass by the final plant. I couldn't have done it without you. Die königliche Familie wird sie jetzt sehen, said a voice from behind. The swagger in it made its meaning plain. The royal family will see you now. And that's the end of chapter 19. Yay, we had some German, guys. We had to talk German in the book. Yippee! Will we get another language? Who knows? Now we had French, Swedish, Japanese, English, German. What's next? I don't know. I didn't even have to redeem, right? You didn't have to at all. Although I'm sure you would like me talking some German, wouldn't you? All right. Riding a giant fish would be pretty fun. Let me see. Auf einem großen Fisch zu reiten wäre schon sehr spaßig. All right, let's do one more chapter, and then it's time for Genshin. Genshin. Oh God, why did I do that? All right, let's do this. No, said the man in the glasses and shirt sleeves. He wiped his dark fingers on a handkerchief he'd picked out from the paperwork strewn across the antique desk in front of him, before dabbing his mouth with the same. Aloysia and Sheikah had been led deep into the bowels of Nistenheim Palace, notably circumventing the throne room, to sit in front of this man and explain their behavior in the Quelleplatz and the park, before putting forward their plan to recompense the crown. He hadn't introduced himself, and there were no identifiers in the room, so they assumed he was either head of the Gipfelbook Watch or a gatekeeper to the royals. While Aloysia and Sheikah had been talking, he'd been eating a pastry with an enticing, savory smell, and bits of it had flaked down his front. They showered everywhere as she stood up and moved past them towards the door. But the heart mice, Aloysia spluttered as he retrieved a long, quietly lavish scarf from the curly coat stand in the corner. Don't tell me this shepherd who's been buying up all the patty berries hasn't attracted hundreds of them to Gipfelbook. Just look at how many there were in the Quelleplatz. Don't you want us to move them on? The king and queen want to move them on, said the man, winding the scarf once, twice around his neck with one hand before struggling into a heavy black pea coat with the other. Aloysia found herself wondering how he was going to fasten it over his triangular frame. Slim in the waist, broad in the back and chest. I have more important things to worry about. Aloysia and Sheikah shot each other a look. Who does he think he is? You're right, said Sheikah calmly, and Aloysia furrowed her brow, wondering where she was going with this. Sorry. If we could just have our things back, we won't waste any more of your time. Aloysia's eyes widened. She was quietly impressed with her friend's audacity. Nice try, the man said, shaking his head before pulling a neat black woolen hat down over his close-shaved hair. You've proven you're a danger to society with that instrument, he went on, waving his hand at the dark wood cabinet behind his desk, where their belongings had been locked up on arrival. And who knows what you were planning to do with those berries? Poison the water supply? Sell them on the black market? I've got enough to do dealing with this infernal guardian. I'm not giving them any more excuses to disrupt my research. They'd watched him inspect the berries with analytical care as soon as they'd arrived, but Aloysia now knew he had no idea what he was dealing with. The man secured the last toggle on his coat. I'm sure Ingvar can find a cell for you, said warily, and placed a broad hand on the curved brass door handle. They just have a character called Ingvar. Okay, Ingvar is the German word for ginger, like the root, the ginger root. Ingvar is the German word for root, for ginger. We have stone caps, Aloysia blurted as the door parted company with the jamp. The man stilled, turned his head slightly, but knew better than to look over his shoulder and reveal his full reaction. Aloysia sensed she was onto something. And skater snare, extracted from the River Weaver. She babbled, knowing it was a risk to reveal so much to him, let alone offer to share it. But spurred on by the thought that Tangaroot's guardian could be expiring at that very moment, that's why a moon seal isn't turning crimson no matter how long you steep it, or how carefully you monitor the moon. It was a long, taut moment before the door closed with a quiet click. The man was still on their side of it. What makes you think I'm interested in any of that? He said, turning eyes on them that lent a certain literalness to the term piercing. Aloysia felt as if she'd been speared on the end of their sharp green gaze. She pressed a hand to her twinging heart, as if she could rub away the stab of fear there. Since she couldn't speak, she simply let her eyes move to the door handle. His own actions had said enough. All right, he conceded, and she saw his teeth grind with frustration. He folded his tree-trunk arms across his chest. Explain yourselves. Everything about the moment made Aloysia want to give way, to spill everything she knew to this authority figure like a dam breaking. Not least because she'd noticed that as one of the hats on the coat stand, modeled by a layer of gray dust, was a formal black wizard's hat, this man was one of her own. How are things? He managed. If she was going to give away Tangaroot Valley's deepest secret, she was going to need no less than its salvation in return. I'm not hungry, Chica said a short time later in a quivery voice, as an elegantly liveried footman proffered to her a plate with pink dusted bonbons. He was pale, dressed all in mint green and bowing so low that the engraved silver platter sat higher to his own head, perched atop 3 digits like a laboratory tripod. When he didn't move, Chica shot the man in the black pea coat a nervous look. Does he understand her? Aloysia said, shrinking with embarrassment that she didn't speak the local language, a feeling she'd become acutely familiar with of late. As he spoke, she put her own bonbon in her mouth and began to chew. As well as we understand each other, said the man in the coat dismissively, between loud sucking noises generated by his own bonbon. He was back behind his desk now, his coat open and scarf loosened, but notably neither removed. He had his babbling brew this morning like the rest of us. He flicked his wrist to indicate the 3 mismatched drinking vessels that had been nudged into spaces between the overflowing pile of papers, book, and crockery that occupied the desk. Aloysia stared. You gave us spells? She balked, showering the desk with saliva. Without consent? What kind of watch person are you? You didn't know? Said Chica, surprising her. You did? Not before, said Chica, wrinkling her nose as a foreman as he bent lower. But once you started speaking my first language, it was pretty obvious something was going on. The man at the desk looked at Aloysia steadily, and she thought she detected a kind of fascinated one-upmanship in it. How can you know so much and yet so little? So she dropped her gaze. Get your little friend here to eat her tongue tie, he said smoothly, in a deep voice which managed to be at once gruff and silky. It was laced with the same accent as the watchwoman who'd brought them in. And we can be properly introduced. On the other side of Aloysia, the footman was now bowing so low that she feared his long nose would scrape the wooden floor. Sheikah was recoiling from him against her chair. "Leave her out of this," Aloysia said. Then, because it seemed likely, and because her other hunch today had turned out to be right, she added, "It is me you want." The man in the coat blinked slowly at this and tilted his head, regarding her with a kind of lazy curiosity. "Why?" he asked thoughtfully. And then he glanced up at the light fixture in its upturned, multicolored glass shade as if he'd just seen the answer in it. "Because you're the magic user," he said with a broad, wide smile. "My sources say she came into town riding a guardian." He sat back in his chair and folded his hands across his chest. "I want you both." "Sheikah, please," begged Aloysia in a low voice to the back of Sheikah's head. "We have to get our things back and get out of here." "I don't like it," Sheikah said, shaking her head stubbornly and not looking around. "I've never needed magic before, and now it's going to decide what I can and can't say to people? I have to keep everything that happens here between us for the rest of my life?" "Look, the tongue ties protect the Gipfel book and Tangleroot from our national secrets getting oh no, wait. I was using that voice, but it was Aloysia talking. Okay, look, the tongue ties protect Gipfel book and Tangleroot from our national secrets getting out," Aloysia assured her. "They're serious magic, yes, but if he's willing to use them, that means he's got important things to talk about. Maybe even things we don't know that could help our guardian." This last part, Aloysia wasn't fully convinced of herself, since so far it seemed that Gipfelbook hadn't managed to solve its own guardian problem. But even if the only one sharing any information of value here was Aloysia, if it meant restoring their berries to them and their freedom and getting them on their way back to Tangleroot, it would be worth it. The mention of the guardian seemed to have sparked something in Sheikah, and she looked up and met the coated man's eye. "Your guardian," she said, the light of zoological curiosity on her face. "What kind of creature is it?" He told her, and Sheikah tried to swallow her tongue tie whole. The moment Sheikah had finished her tongue tie, Aloysia tried to reopen negotiations for their belongings, but the man in the black coat held up a finger, handed each woman her white coat, and led them out of the room. They followed him down a long hallway up a narrow, wood-paneled flight of stairs. Eventually, after some complications with an ornate key that they made of a flimsy-looking white door to take on a shifting, iridescent quality, not unlike Aloysia's door at the bathhouse, their journey came to an end in a square ornamental garden populated by short, neat hedges, slender, elegant trees, and low stone benches. It was overlooked on all sides by corridors, although Aloysia suspected anyone glancing through the windows from the outside of the palace would have seen an altogether different view. As soon as he stepped outside, the man in the coat pulled a long, shining instrument from his pocket. Aloysia's eyes unfocused as he did, in the same way she'd noticed they did whenever she removed something from her pack, though he had opted for the wool hat instead of the standard issue point. She'd been expecting the wizard's wand, but instead, the thick silver bar was topped with spokes that stuck out at its right angles, each of which was capped off with a different colored ball. Some of the spokes resolved as they held the thing out in the breeze, making Aloysia think that it's a cross between a weather vane and an orrery. As the instrument whirred to a near silent stop, the man adjusted his glasses, squinted at the thing, pocketed it, and then hastily scribbled down whatever it had told him in a leather pocketbook. Just before he was swamped by a gaggle of well-heeled people, all of whom seemed to have some urgent question or other. "Oh," came a gasp from behind Aloysia, and she turned to see Sheikah pushing her way through several more people to crouch at the foot of what Aloysia's eyes first interpreted as a snowbank. But as her gaze traveled over the curves of white, the shining glint of black, and the crescent of thunder gray, she realized that it was what she was looking at. What she was looking at. The beast the man in the coat had described in his office. It was lying prone, the way she had left her own guardian. "A snow griffin," she breathed, hearing the same awe and horror in her voice as she had in Sheikah's, and feeling the same pull to drop to her knees in its presence. Even the ordinary brown griffin was uncommon in the region these days, and would have been greeted with squeaks of joy and wonder. So to see this creature, with its forelegs, chest, and head of an eagle, and the body, back legs, and the tail of a lion, formed of boughs of silver, birch, and mounds of living snow that glittered as it breathed shallowly in the winter sunlight. It was like stumbling upon a lost city of gold, startling to the point of seeming unreal. "How can we help her?" Sheikah pleaded, kneeling at the arch of the snow griffin's wing and stroking it soothingly as she turned shining eyes on Aloysia. "Whatever he wants. We can't leave her like this." "That's some way to start a negotiation," Aloysia thought, with a sharp glance over her shoulder to see whether the man in the coat had overheard. But even as she looked, she felt herself pulled tight like a tourniquet. Surely she wouldn't have to choose between this guardian and her own. There had to be a way for her to save both. "Eckhard Beaumont," said the man in the coat, by way of introduction, appearing at Aloysia's back a few moments later, when he extricated himself from the madding crowd. He stuck out one hand rigidly and waited, his expression carefully fixed for Aloysia to respond. Lan had mentioned that name. "You're the shepherd?" she said, as he shook her gloved hand in his. He nodded, confirming the suspicion that had been growing in her since he'd mentioned the guardian in his office. "But what are you doing here?" asked Sheikah, still with the snow griffin at Aloysia's feet. "You said the royal family wanted rid of the heart mice. You've brought them to their doorstep." "They're as concerned about me and heart mice as they are about you and the same," Eckhart said wearily, gesturing around him as if to say, "Does this look like a throne room?" "Hello, Daisy. Welcome in. How are you doing?" "They're a minor inconvenience that someone else will fix, like mold on windows and logs in fireplaces. They don't care what I do, as long as I'm making progress with this," he explained, jerking his thumb in the direction of the snow griffin, but not actually allowing his eyes to stray to it. "Pretty good. I'm doing pretty good as well. We're almost done with the book today." "Are you a comic writer?" "No, I don't write anything myself. I'm not really that creative with it. We're just reading books here." But yeah, we're almost done for the day, and then we're gonna hop over to some games. Not yet. I don't think I will. Lily, I don't think I will. Who knows? I am not that creative. Aloysia studied his steely gaze. Hardened, she saw, with surprise, shame. When she spoke, her tone was gentle. She had realized she needed an answer, and that she wasn't going to get it if he felt threatened. "What happened?" His hard look slid from Sheikah to Aloysia. She had that speared feeling again. There were no stone caps or skater snare in your bags, Eckhart said, folding his arms again and lifting his chin, expectant. Convince me. Would you keep something that important on your person? Aloysia bluffed and felt quietly proud of how nonchalant she managed to sound even when every muscle not involved in speech production had tensed. He studied her now. She relaxed her gaze. I've got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to hide. His shoulders relaxed. He believed her. But can you bring them here? He said, rubbing his chin guardedly. Today. Aloysia wanted to agree, and heartily. Anything to get them on their way. She even attempted to do a mental calculation of whether it might be possible if she sent a messenger bird to find Hollis and the others and bring the ingredients back without stopping. It wouldn't need to be a seabird or a dwarf rock, something that was used to long flights and refueling in the air, or it could hand over Crow and at the other end, considering how impressively quickly he got from Tangleroot to Stromotin. Now that she thought of it. But even if she could be absolutely sure of where the others were, she could send a messenger bird right this minute. The very fastest she could imagine it being done was still 2 days from now. And of course, she didn't know for certain where they were. They could have made it up to Yurdvar, got the patty berries, and now they were on their way home. They could have failed there at first, but kept trying. They could have failed and begun heading back to the valley to meet her. They could have even picked up a new lead from a friend of Lan's and gone somewhere completely unexpected. She considered lying, but that was a short-term solution. It would get her the story of what had happened to the Giffelbook Guardian, but there was no guarantee that it would be of any use to them. And there was no telling what this Eckhart would do when he realized they deceived him. It'll take a few days, she admitted, and he frowned. Unless you have an exceptionally fast messenger bird that can also track people from the air. He smiled grimly to himself. I should have known. That's not good enough. I need it now. I need it yesterday. I know it's difficult to tell when you're dealing with a guardian that's made of snow, he said, closing his eyes heavily. But these are its winter colors. Its beak and talons are naturally golden. They shouldn't be. Aloysia looked at their dullness, at the shade creeping over them, like silver tarnish. Almost black, she said wretchedly, and then thinking quickly, I can tell where we got our ingredients, exact locations. They're not easy to come by, but if the king and queen will let you enlist their best people. They already have our own people and friends in discreet places. This sounded like the sort of thing Lan would say. It came from the same school as covert historical preservationists. In a flash, it came to Aloysia. I know the mercenary said that he just wanted both bounties, but I think there's something more serious going on there. Gipfelburg is a commercial region, Eckhart was saying, scratching his head through his hat. So his arm lifted like something from a timber yard. We can throw our weight around when it comes to purchasing, but anything that requires more creative methods, and we come back empty-handed. We have enough patty berries to start a fruit farm, but no stone caps, and a storeroom full of apparently useless skater snare. He shook his head, looked despairingly over at where the people who were presumably his research team were fussing over the snow griffin. Then, we're your only choice, said Aloysia, as respectfully as she could. He lifted his head at this. She could see from the way his nostrils flared that he'd immediately realized what he had done. She needed to get to him before the anger did. It's not ideal. I know. Believe me, I feel your pain. But you can work with us and have what you need in 2 or 3 days. Or you can choose not to. Let those days go by and be in the same position you are now. Fury flashed across his face and he gritted his teeth. He had seen reason, much to his chagrin. For a moment, he scowled at the ground, resigning himself. You understand you're speaking on behalf of your homeland, he said slowly. That breaking this contract will be tantamount to a casus belli. She could translate the Latin, an occasion of war. He was suggesting that should Tangleroot fail to live up to its promises, Aloysia would have initiated a full-scale conflict. Her mouth went dry. She wasn't entirely convinced it was within his power to do this, but standing here in these auspicious surroundings, a palace courtyard, where this man was the authority, she couldn't reasonably disregard the possibility either. And it was, to a certain extent, irrelevant. Whether Tangleroot was lost to its guardian or lost to war, the only certainty she had was that. Should she not agree, it would be lost. I understand, she said gravely. Crouched nearby, she heard Sheikah made a sound of dismay. Walk with me, said Eckert. Sheikah rose to join them, and they made their way around the edge of the courtyard. When they were a sufficient distance from the researcher, he said in a low voice, It's hard to pinpoint where it started, or when it started. They were keeping close to the outer walls between the windows and a border of silver birch trees. But I suspect it was around the middle of my shepherdship. That's the only time anything out of the ordinary happened. He hesitated, looking at Aloysia and Sheikah in turn. His face was stony, but Aloysia saw the flicker in his eyes. Am I really going to tell them this? She carefully suppressed her desperation. Were they already too late? We were about halfway down the mountain at a little place called Boscage Glen when we met someone coming the other way. He dropped his gaze guiltily. It's a privilege being chosen as shepherd, but it's also extremely isolating, you understand? Aloysia inclined her head, while Sheikah nodded fervently, which made Eckert tense. She saw him twist his body away, disregarding Sheikah and giving Aloysia his full attention. A man learns about his tolerance for his own mind, running on and on, uninterrupted, for so long. It must have been lonely, said Sheikah, gazing at him sympathetically. He rankled. No, he said stiffly. There were moments of awe and scientific fascination, of course, when I observed some new behavior. But I'm a monicist, not a botanist. The moments in between when it was nothing but eating, walking, sleeping, eating, walking, sleeping, were dull, unchallenging, like trying to set a riddle for myself. I needed something diverting. So when I met the gentleman, and he was a fine conversationalist, intelligent, and in possession of more than a few bottles of mead, I'll admit I was distracted by his company. It was a pleasant enough evening by the campfire, but a few too many drinks were imbibed, and I woke late the next morning. The worse for wear. to find the Guardian gone. He paused. Aloysia saw his jaw tighten. Well, my first thought was that it had gone on without me. So I followed the Snow Griffin's pilgrimage trail. But there was no sign. Not a claw mark in the dirt, not a tree shaken bare in scratching or bent aside by its ascent. That's when I really grew concerned. So I retraced my steps and found my way back to the campsite. And eventually, I located the familiar griffin tracks, heading off trail when I finally found the Guardian. It was with the gentleman. He tried to steal a Guardian? Alicia blurted before she could stop herself. Steal it? Who'd be fool enough to do a thing like that? He said, looking at her with a wry amusement. No. I found the Guardian with the gentleman and his Guardian. His Guardian? This was Sheikah. He was a shepherd too? Here, Eckert looked at both of them searchingly. There it was again. How can you know so much and yet so little? He nodded gravely, and when he next spoke, it was with his eyes fixed on Aloysia. Man by the name of Hollis Lancaster. And that's where we end for today. That's the end of chapter 20. I did not expect that name. I mean, we know Hollis pretty well now, don't we? So what did Hollis and Eckert do together and talk about? Guess we'll have to figure that out next week. Oh, God. All right. You know what that means now, guys. There. Yeah. It is time for some Genshin. We gotta do the whole event. The whole event. Let me just quickly change everything around. Time to finally do the event. Wait. I won't end till we're done with the event. Right. Late to the party. Okay. Kind of crazy. This event is also temporary. Is there also like some important lore in there or something? I mean, I guess I'll figure it out, but that would be crazy. mean, it's just good. Fair. We'll see. I haven't done it yet. Wrong cam. There we go. Gonna turn this off. Turn up the game a little bit. And then we turn off the music. All right. Before we start, I have to be right back. I gotta use the bathroom real quick. And then it's Genshin time. Their event writing is awesome. The Sheila Varessa? You mean the one in Dragonspine? That one was really good, for sure. Yeah, the Dragonspine one with the race and the kid, yeah. No, I like that one as well. Alright, I'll be right back. I gotta use the bathroom and then... Genshin.